Well, well, well. It's Christmas morning, Brian Driscoll, or
Yeah.
Christmas afternoon now. We participated in Christmas morning
Well,
earlier, but
there was a funny response to your thing, and somebody was like, "No, you're wrong. Christmas morning is more like the first week of the season." I was like, "That's because you're a fan, not a
exactly,
coach.
exactly.
For a
Yes,
coach, it's day one of fall camp,
correct.
100%.
Yep, no
There's
doubt
no
about
doubt
it.
about it.
No doubt about it. And there's a school locally here that it's the most wonderful time of the year, and they literally go out on the practice field and sing that song, which I think is kind of funny. Hey, first day of fall practice, Brian, is in the books. We were there. It was an open practice. We got to see from start to finish. A little shorter than I think we anticipated. I'm not sure if that was weather related or not. I don't know if that question got asked or not, but
It was not. It was not
okay.
asked. I
Okay.
wonder if part of it also has to do with sort of some of the changes that they're trying to do to the strength program, and
Sure.
a lot of reps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see. It was an interesting day, but some things we saw, Vince. It was Coach Freeman talked. You and I were like, not a ton of emotion today. Coach Freeman talked about how for the first day, he wanted to kind of say, hey, look, last year first day we had a lot of emotion, and they kind of burned themselves out quick.
Yeah.
Like, let's build to that emotion. But when they got to some team stuff, there's some energy. There's some talking. There's some back and forth. And, one of my favorite plays where I don't think Devin Houston realized that the running back is told to run to the end zone. And he was ready to fight Jeremiah Love because he wouldn't stop running. Like he didn't want to let him get in the end zone. And then it was like, oh, wait, he's supposed to get to the end zone. So there was some of that stuff. But it was overall, Vince, it was a good day.
Yeah.
I was talking with Sean Davis just now before we got on the show. And the thing I said to him was like, every year we go to these, and my biggest takeaway is there's always like a kid or two. You're like, man, that guy's different. That guy's different. Thing I noticed today, Vince, and again, it's day one, but it's about comparing it to other day ones.
Right.
There's a lot more of those type of guys on this football team. A lot more of those type of guys, especially in the freshman and sophomore classes. There's some guys in the freshman and sophomore classes that you look at and say, that guy moves different.
Mm-hmm.
That guy plays at a different gear, just a naturally different gear. And then Coach Freeman talked about how in the starting lineup they're a much more veteran team. You saw that today. Not a lot of mistakes today, like not a lot of false starts. There was like the one time we saw anything like that was from like the third team.
It was the third team. It was they were doing like a bunch. It was like a short yardage kind of a thing.
I think 4 of the 5 offensive linemen were freshmen. It was a freshman quarterback. I mean, it was right. You expect that, but
the play was good though. I like the play.
Yeah, it was a pretty crisp. Yeah, I know, right? It was a pretty crisp practice. Good tempo. I thought got a lot of good work in, a lot of individual on day one, which I kind of like. I like individual. I don't like having a million team reps on day one because you're not in pads, right? You just got helmets on. So, get a lot of the footwork in, get a lot of teaching in. We saw a lot of that, but what we had kind of thought this team had a chance to be a fast team. And I think at least day one, we saw that this team's got some speed and even some of the younger players are just like, yeah, that guy doesn't have a clue what he's doing. We'll talk about Micah Bell in a little bit. Not really sure what he's doing all the time, but when he can just open up and run, you're like, holy moly.
Yeah, he used his speed a couple times.
Fly. Yeah. So very talented team, Vince. That's the big thing for me. And we saw it at every position. There was a particular veteran linebacker that we're going to talk about that made a play. You're like, whoa, that guy was moving. And you just kind of saw flashy plays like that all day. You're like, okay. That's nice. That's nice.
That's very nice.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
It was some good stuff, but good competition. And it's just great to be out there watching football again, man. So we're not talking about, coaching moves and recruiting and all this. We're talking football. They got the gold helmets on. They got the blue and gold on. And man, it was a fun day.
It was a fun day. And there's a lot of things as we work our way through here that I was excited about, that I can't wait to tell everybody about, to be honest with you. There was, I was kind of on I was on the video for a little while, and you told me which position groups to keep an eye on. And of course I ended up at a position group that you didn't tell me to watch. And I enjoyed it thoroughly, probably more than I should have.
Is that the offensive line one?
Yeah.
I'm breaking down the film. I'm like, I didn't tell him to go spend time in the offensive line. And it's like 2/3 of your film. I'm like, so just so y'all understand, I told Vince, I want you spending time today getting video. Vince is taking my video today. I want you watching the quarterbacks, running backs, or quarterbacks, receivers, and if you can make it over there, D-line and linebackers.
Yep.
So I download all the video clips. I'm like, this is like 2/3 offensive line. So, and like 3 quarterback clips. Like, I'm like, come on, man.
Hey, now there was more than that. There was more than that.
It ended up being a really good film for me watching it, because I didn't get to see that part of practice. But you look at it and you're like, hey, that drill looks familiar. I know this guy whose initial started with H and H that did this exact same drill and had the exact same coaching points and the exact.
And that's why I waited and I filmed the coaching points as well.
We'll get to it.
I did that for you. And I just say I did that for you.
We'll get to it. Yeah. You knew I would be mad at you when I started hearing all that. I was like, okay, smart move. But it was a good first day, Vince. And I know we want to talk about the offense, defense. We're going to talk about the offense first. We'll dive into defense. And we're going to talk a little special teams at the end. Vince has charted some stuff. We saw some interesting stuff from the punters today. I'll just say this. We'll tease you a little bit. We were real nervous at first. Like, uh-oh.
It's like,
but by the end of it, we realized what was going on. This is why you let things finish. That's why I say, let it play out.
That's right.
Okay.
Even at practice.
A lot better by the end. And we felt better about it. So a lot of good stuff today, Vince. So let's start off on offense. Just kind of, first of all, overall, obviously we said first a chance for us to see Jared Parker running the offense. He's very active.
Yes, he is.
And the thing I like, though, is he didn't dominate the instruction the way that we have seen from past coordinators, like the last couple of coordinators. You know what it reminded me a lot of? Reminded me a lot of a Mike Denbrock practice.
Okay.
Because Mike Denbrock was always there was no doubt in 15 who the OC was. It was Denbrock.
Right.
But there was the expectation that other coaches needed to, there was room for he stand to be there. There was expectations that other coaches were going to kind of be there. And I would say that that's a good thing because this coaching staff outside of Parker is probably better than that one is, I would say, I think that's fair to say. So I was very encouraged to see that. But yes, you saw Coach Gaduli very active, Coach McCullough, Coach Stuckey, Coach Rudolph. I mean, it was a really engaging deal. But, when Coach Parker was talking, that's what they were. Mm-hmm. That's what it was. So a lot of attention to detail, talking points today. Little things about, hey, you're going against the zone. You've got to do this, getting there quickly, showing instruction, making them do it again. Overall, for a first day, it was good first day, Vince. It's good.
Yeah,
first day.
I mean, offensively, they weren't, diving deep into the playbook or anything like that. It was all very fundamental.
We did see some stuff we liked. We saw some new wrinkles that we liked.
No doubt about that. But are we going position groups yet? Or are we just doing all as
just
a
kind of big
here?
picture, just kind of what we saw, overall thoughts?
I liked
saw from it.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from a schematic standpoint. I felt like as a whole, they were scheming to get players involved and to amplify their skill set. And I know that sounds obvious, like that should always happen in an offense. It happens all the time at the high school level because you've got to get your dudes the ball. Otherwise, you're not gonna win. Mm-hmm. We just haven't seen that at Notre Dame. It's been more scheme oriented as opposed to player oriented, and I felt like on a couple of different levels, this was player oriented scheme. They were playing towards the skill set of certain players, and I'm not just talking about one certain player, but like a group of players. It's very obvious. That the offense is going to revolve around what these guys can do and do at a high level.
I'll say it this way, Vince, because here's the thing. We can't tell you all specific schemes that we saw today. Otherwise, guess what? Irish breakdown's no longer allowed at practice anymore. And honestly, as a former coach, I would be like, hey, don't be telling people like they ran this particular scheme, things like that. So
exactly,
be somewhat general with those type of things. But the way that what Vince is saying is this is a team with a lot more speed on offense than they've had in past years. And the stuff we saw today is playing to that. This is not what we saw today was there's scheme involved, right? Like there's concepts in the pass game they're utilizing, but there was a lot of stuff today where it was, okay, this is about getting guys in space. This is about creating ISOs. Like one point in time, they ran a particular route to Chris Tyree, talk about, and Vince looks at me and goes, that whole play was designed to get number 2 the football, right? On a particular route.
At full speed.
It was just, we saw things like that. We saw that where Jabron Payne's getting the ball in different areas. You could see, hey, they think this team's got some guys can run.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least the stuff we saw today,
Sure.
in practice one, are things that are not, okay, let's do a million different things and motions and shifts and do all this so we can go show you this real complex scheme at you to show everyone how smart I am. It was more about, hey, let's get number 2 the football.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get number 3. Well, now he's number 3. Let's get number 3 the football. Let's get numbers 5 the football. Let's ISO to get number 12 the football, or 24,
sure.
number 7 or whatever. And
83.
And exactly. And so those are things you like to see from day one. Now, obviously, it's got to continue.
Sure.
But that was a good first step to me.
And just to build on that, it wasn't just about getting the ball in certain guys' hands and maximizing their talent. It was also the offensive line. Like they're moving these guys around a little bit. They're getting these guys in some space, and they're using their footwork, which is one of the things that these guys do really well.
Yeah.
And they're using it to their advantage, which I really like to see. It wasn't just like bully ball, which they can do. Don't get me wrong. These guys can do that, but they were using their skill set and what they're really good at. I mean, I'll tell you what, some of these linemen got some wheels too.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was surprised by, Vince. Let's get in. I mean, we can kind of talk about that. We saw the line is a lot bigger than it was last year.
Yes.
I mean, with the exception of Blake Fisher, everybody's bigger than they were. Well, actually, Blake Fisher and Rocco Spindler, but they're still both over 310 pounds.
Right.
But like a lot of guys are bigger, and so I'm thinking, well, they're going to probably just be okay, we're going to run a million duos again. I don't know that I saw that run one time today. Now they're going to run it, but
sure, of course,
we saw 5 different run concepts today, and I don't know that I saw any of them as duo. In my opinion, I didn't see it. Maybe you did. I didn't see that.
No, I didn't.
And so, there's some bully ball on there, but there's also, we're going to move a little bit. And again, that fits into what you have with the running back. So I think that was probably my biggest takeaway today is this is an offense that is still a work in progress of the skill positions fundamentally.
Sure.
But I think that I know what we saw a couple years ago. And I'll say that there's definitely some advancements they're working on from a fundamental standpoint at the perimeter positions. But just overall, this is a unique offense because I have always said, Vince, and I know you and I are on the same page on this. I love diversity in football. And I'm talking skill diversity. And this unit, to me, it might have the most skill diverse group of players I've ever seen. But there's a lot of speed. There's speed at tight end, there's speed at running back, and of course there's speed at receiver.
Right.
And so that's kind of one of the things that really kind of stood out to me today.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
No, I completely agree. And there's a difference between first team, second team, third team, and I got all of my feels when the first team would be out there because of the things that they were doing to make sure they were getting the ball and they were being successful and all of those different things. And I got excited just watching this offense because it wasn't the predictable offense that we've seen in the past. And again, it's day one. I don't want to get too crazy and about what we saw, what we didn't see.
Those are the kind of observations that you really look for on the first day.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, what's the speed like? What's the conditioning like? Are guys in good shape? Are a lot of those other types of things, and that's kind of what I'm kind of more referring to, Vince, is those day one observations that you can make that aren't dependent upon pads and other type of things. That's what I'm talking about, and I think that's what you're saying. It's one of those things where when I talk about what I'm saying day one, comparing it to, well, what did I see in past years on day one?
Exactly.
And just looking overall at because those are things as a coach you look at. What did we talk about the other day? One of the first things you look at is, okay, who put in the work this summer?
Right.
That's a little bit easier at the places like Notre Dame and Ohio State and Michigan because you're around them all summer. At least some of your coaches are around them all summer. So, I mean, you kind of have an idea who showed up for workouts. But there's still sort of that, who came in today with the right attitude? Who's that young guy that just came in with I don't care where you have me on the depth chart day one, I'm coming in to play. right? I'm coming into fired up. Like, we'll talk about some guys, especially on defense, but those are the things that you look for in day one. And one of the things you always look for in day one is, how does this team move?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll get into certain position groups. Actually, let's just dive into the position groups, man, because a lot of this is gonna lead into that.
Right.
And
sure.
it's kind of just getting me fired up with some of these, buddy. But and again, all of this with the caveat of it's day one with no pads. But when we talk about it, we're comparing it to what we've seen in past years in the first week of practice. And that's what the comparisons are going to be to. Not what we've seen from teams in September and October, November, but what we've seen from teams when camp opens. Because you and I have been at a lot of these.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were both at the first of Brian Kelly. We were both at that one. And so we've seen I wasn't there for 12 and 13, and that's about it. I mean, last year because
you were still you were there in spirit.
I was, and there might have been somebody there that recorded some stuff or sent me some stuff. I might have some connections. That I'm not even talking about you.
I know you're not.
I might have known someone around the program that liked me and sent me some stuff from practices I couldn't be at, but you never know. But let's start at quarterback, Vince.
Yeah.
I thought the quarterback room today, compared to where it was at the end of the last practice was on the spring, was light years ahead.
Absolutely.
Across the board. Let's start with Sam Hartman. First things first, the timing today was outstanding. I think he missed one ball that he just overthrew. I think it was Tobias.
That fade route.
Right.
Yeah.
Every other time he missed, it was missed where you want to miss. Okay, this one was low and away. This one was back shoulder. It was a little too back shoulder, but it was back shoulder. I thought his timing was a lot better. And he made some throws today where you're like, he's clearly, his relationship with the receivers is growing. And what was interesting today? I kind of felt like the guy he looked for the most today was Chris Tyree. It just like in one-on-ones and 7-on-7s and team, it's just like him and number 2 just have a thing. And then I would argue that Jaden Thomas, he likes, you can clear. Jaden didn't have a great day. We'll get into that, but he looks for him. And then, of course, Tobias. But today, I just felt like Sam Hartman kept looking a lot for Chris Tyree. And I would argue the best throw he made all day was on that over route in one-on-ones. So they're on the left hash. And so a lot of times on an over, the overs come. So if I'm on the left hash, a lot of times you're on an over route from a receiver to away, and he's kind of coming to you. On this one, the over started on the near hash. So he's working away. And Thomas Harper actually had pretty good coverage, but Tyree had a step on him, and Hartman's like, well, there's no way this kid can catch Chris Tyree. So he threw it over top and just like got rid of it quick, and just like Tyree is so Tyree is running this way. So I'm running an over. So the line of scrimmage is like right there. Hartman's way back there. He just dropped it right over Chris Tyree's head, just boom, just like that. Just teardropped it. Boom. And you're like, okay, that's not what we saw that ball get missed in the spring with the receivers, because just the timing and the connection wasn't there, And so he had timing, that today.
Trust, all of it. Yeah.
I believe he's the one who threw the ball on that back shoulder to Tobias that Morrison broke up. I believe that was about as good of a ball as you can make there. So we saw some of that today. It definitely ran a lot of RPO stuff today, which we can say because we've been saying they're going to do it. A lot of different RPO concepts today.
Some missed, some not.
Hartman is going to just not get rid of the whole walk into the line thing. I just don't think he's going to be able to break that habit. But he got a little better about it. He would walk, but then he would stop and do a little bit of that. That just feel like that's just too much part of his DNA to really break that.
5 years, man. Like, I get it.
I get it. But I thought he was pretty sharp today. I mean, he had the one interception. Where's my notes?
Well, he had that interception that Morrison got, and it looked like
you're talking about not the one-on-ones.
No, I was talking about
him, right?
It was either team or 7-on-7.
Benjamin did a great job baiting it. I'll just hint about the defensive side. Benjamin Morrison's still really freaking good today. I mean, and today was obvious of that. But I thought he kind of baited him and then just kind of read Rico and just baited him. And Sam thought Sam's not going against guys like Benjamin Morrison in practice a whole lot.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like
he baited him.
Like you could tell Sam was upset with with whatever, right? Whether it was Rico running the wrong route or whether it was himself for being baited or whatever the case may be, you could tell he was upset. And it was the last play of the
It's like he kept thinking Rico was going to come across, and Rico stopped and worked out. But really, it was about Benjamin baited him. I mean, he just kind of stayed back, and as soon as the ball came out, boom, he jumped it. So that was good to see. I thought Steve Angeli threw the ball. Today was the best ball placement I've ever seen from Steve Angeli. Like that's been my biggest concern from him. Now there's a couple throws here and there. Day one, it's going to happen. He had a really bad pick. The ball that Jaden Mickey made the one-handed catch, I still don't know who the heck he was throwing that ball to.
It was into the middle of nowhere.
Yes, and Jaden made a great play.
We'll talk about that. That could have been defense.
That could have been receiver ran the wrong route.
Sure,
that could have been something like that. Every quarterback had a couple of those today. But I thought Steve threw the ball overall pretty well today. I did. Good ball placement. He threw a really nice ball to Tobias. He's the one that actually threw the fade to Tobias to beat Cam Hart for a touchdown, correct?
Yep.
That came from Steve, and that was perfect. Boom, over the outside shoulder. So I thought Steve had a good day too, and I thought Kenny Minchie did as well. But first, let's start with Steve, Vince, and kind of what you saw from him, because I thought he probably got off to the slowest start. His first couple balls weren't quite as sharp. But he quickly got comfortable, and I thought had a pretty good day of practice.
Well, and he was a bit of a verbal guy, which I really like to see from him.
Because that doesn't surprise me.
I mean, he was the practices that we were able to see in the spring, and then obviously last fall, that wasn't the case. Now that's because he was a freshman.
I mean, and he was also in the spring still the number 3. He was battling for the number 3 quarterback.
Absolutely. So I like to see that from a maturation process, obviously. But no, his ball placement was much better. If I had seen that Steve Angeli, I might have wavered on my predictions of Kenny Minchie a little bit. I'm sticking with it, obviously.
No, I'm not wavering because of how I saw Kenny throw the ball.
Right, but Steve took a step that he hadn't taken yet. And that was really, really good to see. It was really, really good to see.
He was snapping the ball off well. He was throwing. He wasn't aiming it. He was getting the ball down. In the past, he tends to be a high thrower. I didn't see a lot of that from Steve today, to be honest with you. I thought and he had that play where he outran Jalen Snead to the corner on a keep. Now, I don't know if Jalen Snead was necessarily running full speed, but it kind of looked like he was. And Steve got outside on the keep. I thought that was a good play.
Yeah.
I thought Steve's decision-making is still that of a redshirt freshman.
Sure.
Right. And we'll say the same thing about Kenny is Sam could pick it up and read it and just get it out quick, which you'd expect 5th-year senior versus redshirt freshman, right?
6th-year senior.
6th-year senior.
Yeah.
So Steve will get there, but that was noticeable.
Sure.
Was the timing of how quickly Sam Hartman got the reads down, got the ball out, put the ball into tight spots. But even then, I believe it was Steve who threw that into triple coverage slant that Rico Flores made a great catch on.
And we were all like, terrible decision, great throw. Remember that? Yeah.
It's one of those ones like from Major League. Nice catch, Mays. Don't ever effing do it again. You know what I mean? It's like one of those like great throw, Steve. Don't ever do that again. You know what I mean? Because that worked against the third team secondary. But the thing I liked, Vince, is I liked the guts. It was like, yes, it was not the right throw, but he didn't like force it. Like from the standpoint of what I mean by force is it didn't look like a panic force.
Right.
It was a I can fit this thing in there.
Yes, that's absolutely what it was.
And you're going to say, hey, that was great that worked. But if Xavier Watts is the safety on that play and Benjamin Morrison's the corner, that ball's going the other way.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And Xavier had a couple of those today, by the way. So, but yeah, I mean, but those are Vince. You and I have always said with a quarterback, I want to see a guy that I got to be like, okay, I get where you're trying to make that throw, but let's not make that one. You want that guy that's going to try to do. And so now you see the film and you're like, okay, I get what you're doing there. If you're going to make that throw, you better throw it sooner. That's the teaching point. But if you wait that late against better players or older players who are more confident, it's going to get picked off. But I liked the confidence that he thought he could make that throw.
Because you can't give a guy the confidence to make the throw if he doesn't already have it. You know what I mean? Right. Like you can't manufacture confidence. Like if that guy's not going to have confidence to make deep throws and to put them in small windows and stuff like that, you can dial them back. It's very difficult to dial somebody up.
Right. As we learned with Ian Book.
That's exactly my point.
I mean, you either have that or you don't.
Correct.
And we saw a little bit of that from Kenny Minchie today too. The biggest thing for me from Kenny Minchie, remember what you and I talked about this summer. Well, I did an intel piece on the board, and it's been out over a week now, so I'll give you a little glimpse of it. But one of the things that we heard is he's really throwing the ball well. The receivers love catching balls from Kenny Minchie.
Yep.
Because the way he throws, but the problem that he had, the problem that I thought he had to me is in the spring is he kept aiming everything. Like he wasn't letting it loose. It's like he was trying to throw a dart at the dartboard. Like, okay, I got to get it right. Just aim it out there. And that's not the player that you recruited. Like the player you recruited was that guy who was just slinging that thing all over the field. Today, Kenny looked more like that. Now, again, a lot to clean up from a decision-making standpoint, but the ball placement was exceptional because that's just who Kenny is. And he was throwing loose. I mean, he had a couple like he just like really tight from the ear, like Steve Spurrier type throws, like boom, just came out quick. Like, damn, that dude got that ball out quick. Wasn't to the right guy, but he got that ball out quick. Because I'm thinking of that one. It was the corner thing where we thought he should have pulled and thrown to the corner. So it's like, okay, but man, he got that ball out quick. If he doesn't get that ball out as quick as it did, it's a pick six.
Sure.
As opposed to, I think the guy caught it, but he got tackled like right at the line, if I remember correctly. Or did it get broken up?
I think it got broken up because we talked about it being two bad decisions. And yeah.
But I felt like if he doesn't throw that ball out there with the arm speed and the quickness of the release, that's going the other way.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the point. But you saw a more confident player today. You saw a guy that was letting it loose, wasn't afraid to make a mistake. And that's okay because like we just said with Steve Angeli is if you make mistakes, that gives me something to teach off of.
Right.
If I'm just like, okay, you didn't throw the ball. Like I'll tell you, that's something I love today. And I wonder if this is a coaching point. Remember last year when we'd be doing 1-on-1s or 7-on-7 and the quarterbacks just wouldn't throw it? We only saw that once today, and that was that play where Rico Flores
he went up against Cam Hart.
Destroyed by Cam Hart. And that was the only time because there was nobody to throw the ball to.
So nobody to throw the ball to.
Quarterbacks were throwing some picks, right? But it was like, hey, this drill's not necessarily only for you.
Exactly.
Right? The DBs need a chance to make plays. We need to know that they can catch the ball and stuff too. And we saw a little bit more of that today, and I'm curious if that was intentional. Like it's a 1-on-1. Throw the ball.
Right. But you know what? There wasn't a lot of balls on the ground either.
That's it. Yeah.
That was
when they were missed. When they were on the ground, they were forced on the ground.
Correct.
And that's something we'll get to with the defense. We'll get to that with the defense. But I just like the confidence. Now, again, there's Sam Hartman, and then there's like Kenny Minchie and Steve Angeli down here, right?
Of course.
Again,
yes.
Sixth-year senior, redshirt freshman, and true freshman. So, like,
exactly.
Anyone telling you that there's maybe a quarterback competition, stop listening to them. Don't read anything else they write. Don't watch their show. They have no clue what they're talking about. Okay.
Right.
Take that aside.
There is a quarterback competition, but it's not
for bingo. As the quarterback's coach, I'm encouraged by the confidence in which they went about their business today.
Yeah.
That's what I took away from Angeli. Now, a lot to clean up. Gino Guidugli's got a lot. He's going to have to improve upon decision-making wise and all that kind of stuff. But I like how they were really aggressive. They just snapped it out there. They were playing with confidence. They were not. And what I like too, Vince, is they all three threw a pick, at least a pick today. Actually, I don't know that Kenny threw a pick. He had several balls batted down, but I don't know if he threw a pick.
Yeah.
But they all had balls that should have been picked. I know he had one ball that probably should have been picked. But it didn't rattle them. They just came back the next play and were like, boom, go make that next play.
And here's what I'll say, because you brought up Gino Guidugli, and I kind of leaned over and I said something to you. There was a point where they were doing some inside run recognition, and the quarterbacks were over there. Some of the quarterbacks were over there, and then they were doing like some 7-on-7, and quarterbacks were over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sam Hartman was with the first team offense, and they were doing run rec. The second team was doing like the 7-on-7, kind of more pass rec. Guess where Gino Guidugli was? He was on the second team.
Yeah.
And he was working with Steve. And he was, you know what I mean? Like, but the offensive coordinator needed to be with the first team. And that's where having somebody that is a separate title. And again, I am not one of the people that thought that you can't be the quarterback's coach and the offensive coordinator. That's just nonsense.
For the nature of this particular group.
This particular group and the way that they are going about it, obviously the offensive coordinator is the tight ends coach. And the quarterback's coach was able to take an entire period with Steve, and he was talking about his reads, and they were going through it, and he was coaching them up and doing all these different things. And so I mean, obviously you can do that, but it was nice to actually see it with my own two eyes. It wasn't, there are coaches, and I know you've seen them, Brian, there are coaches out there that just want to stick with the ones. They want to hang with the starter because,
and they kind of need to if you're the coordinator. Like that's the thing.
And absolutely correct.
If you're the coordinator.
Yes. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. But yeah, it was nice to see.
Well, and then they also will be there with they're always around the throwing part. I believe what you're referring to is when he went with you said the twos, but that was down where they were doing inside run. Correct?
I thought it was Hartman that was handing off. He was working mesh and stuff with run, and then Steve was over here. And I thought they were doing some run rec, but they were off. Yeah. I know they were doing run away from him.
Gino was not with them when they were doing pass stuff.
Okay.
Which I like because you can teach that off of film. And you've got Jared Parker there, and you've got here's the other thing too is if I'm Gino and I'm like, I gotta be down here in this drill. I got two guys in Jared Parker, who's the OC, but also let's not forget Chancey Stuckey was a Division I quarterback for a year at Clemson.
He's a quarterback?
He went to Clemson.
I didn't realize that. I thought he was always a receiver.
Nope. He moved to receiver. Yeah, Chancey Stuckey was a really good high school quarterback.
Did not realize that.
And so, that's another guy that's just a set of eyes that can – and he knows the reads that you're trying to make. So, yeah, Chancey Stuckey, as a freshman in college, threw 21 passes and he has 2 touchdown passes in his career.
I did not know that. How did
I
not know that?
More than Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, but the point being is like that was good to see.
Sure.
It was, and I think it's needed because of the youth of the two guys behind the starter. You need a guy that can focus on them, and that was good. But I did like the aggressiveness. Vince, I want to talk about the running backs, man. I've been dying to talk about the running backs.
You want to talk about? I mean, we knew this was a deep room. We knew it was a deep room. But to see it with your own eyes,
it was even better than I thought.
Oh, it's great.
This is going to sound bad. Audric Estime looks so slow compared to the rest of the running back room. And he looked
watch him
every bit as good as I didn't watch him a ton.
Yeah.
But just going through drills, he looked every bit as good as he did last fall because that's one thing I did get is all the drills. You guys would record all the drills that we were allowed to record, and I saw those. And Audric looked great in that regard.
Right.
But from a speed standpoint, he's significantly slower than everybody else running back.
He is.
I mean, just like, and that's not an insult on Audric because we all know Audric's a dude. I just got done saying in a recent breakdown, the last 10 games of the year, Audric was averaging 6.6 yards per carry. He's a dude. This is how ridiculous this room is. I thought Jadarian Price, we've heard a lot about the burst being back. I don't know if it's going to be here all year because with an Achilles, you worry about the fatigue factor. Sure. And once that, it's not so much the tendon that fatigues, it's the muscles around it. If they fatigue, you lose the burst, right? And you've just got to just rest. So we'll find out if he can keep it all year. But Vince, today you look at drills, the gear was back. The gear was back. He looked rusty though. I mean, you could tell he hadn't played football in a long time.
Sure,
they had a couple miss run fits, but then as he got, he had that one run later where it just was like, boy, he got through that hole in a hurry. That one touchdown. When we say touchdown, they were working red zone. It was like going in. It was like 20 and in.
Yeah,
it wasn't like a 80-yard run or anything like that. But he had that one touchdown run where it was kind of like, okay, he got through there really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good to see Jadarian Price back there with that burst back, Vince. He has, when he puts his foot in the ground, we saw it today, and he can scoot, man. It's as good. That was my first time actually seeing Jadarian in person.
Oh, that's
true. Because I wasn't there last spring.
That's true.
And he was out for fall camp, so I'd never actually seen Jadarian in person. And you see it, and you're like, okay, yep, that guy's got some juice. There's no doubt about it. He was impressive to me today from an athleticism standpoint. Now it's about shake off the rust.
Sure.
Right? The timing of you could tell the timing was off with him hitting the holes. Because remember, he didn't have spring, and he didn't really get cleared till this summer. So he's catching up on the technical part of it that he missed all of last season. But I thought that was good to see, man. That the juice he had, and here's the crazy thing, folks. Jadarian Price is not the most explosive running back that Notre Dame has right now.
No.
We'll get to him. I
don't know if you want me to say who that was.
We'll get to him. Well, I think they all know who we're talking about. Okay. But we'll get to him. We're going to
Jabron Payne he picked up where he left off in the spring.
No, he didn't.
You're saying he's much
way better today than he did in the spring.
All right.
Because he looked so much more – he had so much more juice today.
Yeah.
Like he looked really like he looked like the kid we saw as a sophomore, that really shifty,
Right.
like elusive guy. And he was another guy, Vince. I'm kind of joking. I'm not really disagreeing with Vince. I'm just adding a little sauce to it. He was another guy today, Vince, that the stuff they were doing when he was in the game was a little different than what they were doing with the other running backs. Did you notice that? Like pass game wise and run game wise, when when Jabron Payne was in there, they did some things that we didn't see them do with the other running backs. Can't get into to things why, but they just did some things that you're like, okay, they see this as a kid they've got to figure out a way to get the football to.
Exactly.
And we'll say, because we've seen Notre Dame do this before, but they ran that little quick tunnel screen outside that they did to Chris Tyree last year. He made one guy miss behind the line and then just exploded vertically and then bounced back out for a score. You're like, okay, yeah, that juice that we hoped would come back before all the injuries, because he looked good. He looked smooth in the spring. Right? Like this is why I kind of joke with you about like, no,
Sure.
He didn't pick up where he left off. He's better. He looked so smooth and decisive and clean in the spring. But today he did those things, but he had juice. He had a little bit more juice. He had a little bit more burst on that when he would accelerate. And I thought that was the thing that kind of stood out to me, Vince, with Jabron is, and I said this to Buddy, I'll say it. Y'all are going to think I'm nuts. Y'all are going to think I'm stupid. But if the sophomore version today is what we see from Jabron Payne, he's got way more God-given ability than the starting running back in 2019, 2020, or 2021 at Notre Dame. And that's Tony Jones and Kyron Williams. Like, just there are teams that Jabron Payne would have started on at Notre Dame.
Oh yeah.
And right now he's battling just to be number 2, or, hoping to be number 2, and
number 2,
that'll
number
be
3.
Tough.
Yeah, exactly.
He could be 3, could be 4. I mean, that kid's got some. When you look at if we just stop talking about the talent at running back after Jadarian and Jabron, this guys we already know it. I have zero interest in watching Audric Estime without pads on. Zero.
Right.
Because we already know who he is, right? I mean,
exactly.
I'm not wasting a lot of time. Like, oh, hey, he looks like $1 million. I saw that in stretch, right? Okay, I got all the evaluation I need from Audric Estime in stretch. Okay,
exactly.
Looks great. He's moving around fine. He's not stiff. Okay, I'm not going to watch him that much anymore today.
Right.
But if we just got done to just stop talking about the running backs after those two, we'd be excited. I thought Devin Ford looked good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't watch him a ton today, mostly drills. I thought he looked really good feet, really quick feet. Looks like he's filled out a little bit from where he was at Penn State. Like he just looked a little thicker to me today than what we saw in film. But he moved well. I thought he'd look good. And then Jeremiah Love needs a lot of technical work. But that's the most explosive running back I've ever seen in a Notre Dame uniform. And that's saying something, because if it wasn't him, I might say Jadarian Price is. And again, I've seen Josh Adams up in practice, up close and personal. I've seen Dexter Williams. I've seen Sierra Wood. I've seen those guys. These two kids, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, they are two incredibly explosive running backs. The one touchdown run that Jeremiah Love had, I don't know that I've ever seen a running back take a handoff and get through the line of scrimmage as fast as he did. Now, it helped that he kind of felt confident on that one, because there's a lot of other times you're like, he didn't know what he was doing and he's kind of slow and he's unsure. But when he turns it loose, he plays with a gear that you just don't see. And he dropped the first ball, Vince, that they threw at him today in one-on-ones.
But his hands
after that, talk about that, because I know you noted that several times.
His hands are soft. His hands are good. Like they were making a point to throw him and Price the ball. They had him out. They had them lining up in the slot. Like they had guys out away from the line of scrimmage, and they were throwing them the ball. They were running plays that were designed to throw the ball to the running backs. Mm-hmm. I mean, and
you're talking about like not just check downs and stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
Like designed to throw to them, running routes, not just running like a little swing or a flat route or whatever. Like I was very impressed with the fact that they were really getting these guys out working in space. And I will second the motion on that Price or Jabron Payne. No, yeah. The Payne tunnel screen.
Yes.
Was a thing of beauty. That was a thing of beauty. And then on top of that, they had a lineman out front blocking for him. Like it happened so fast, and the movements, and it takes a while. Look, I've coached screens, you've coached screens. Sometimes it takes a little while to kind of get the timing down and just the footwork and just all of that stuff. It was like a symphony. It was a symphony where they had linemen out front blocking for him and wide receivers blocking for him. He came back, one step, catch the ball, go, boom, step, put his foot in the ground and go. And man, that was awesome to see. Like, I really enjoyed watching that particular play a lot.
Now, Vince, what we see from Jadarian and Jeremiah is they're going to need the most coaching.
Sure.
From here's your read, here's your track, here's your necessary footwork. Because a couple times, both of them got downhill too quickly. And so, like, when my only year coaching running backs, we were an inside zone team primarily, but we were an inside zone team from under center. And so footwork is incredibly important on that, because so ours was open, cross, get downhill. If you just opened and got downhill, you got downhill too quickly.
Right.
And so the hole hadn't opened up yet when you get the football. If you open, cross, plant, get downhill, now you run the risk of the hole closing before you get downhill. The timing, the track, the proper footwork to get there, they were both rushing their initial footwork today. Like, they were in such a hurry to get the ball and go,
right,
that they were they were getting there before the holes were getting open, right? Yep. When you combine that with how fast they are, it's like, that's a bad combination, right? So, like, athletically, it's great. But if you're Dylan McCullough, you're like, thank you, Lord. Let me have those problems. Let me have these kids who are too fast to get downhill. I got to coach that up. Coach McCullough will be fine with that. But the point is like, those guys are they're works in progress, right? Like, you want them to look phenomenal on day one without pads on, and they did.
Yeah.
Now it's about, okay, now let's make you guys crisp football players. I'm not worried about either one of them. Jeremiah is still learning what Notre Dame wants, and Jadarian missed a whole year. I mean, Jadarian missed every single practice of of the entire fall last year and the entire spring.
Right. It's a lot.
He's just shaking the rust off. It'll probably take him a week or to shake that rust off. But I was so happy to see the burst back.
Oh.
And with Jeremiah, we had the intel piece. I guys, give you a little bit of a glimpse into this. People that are on the message board already know this, but I've never had this happen to me before, because I don't know that there's a single bit of intel I put out where I only hear from one person. And I try to get as many people as I can to talk to, and you want to see if, like, the stuff is consistent, from the different people you talk to. And I've never had this happen before where two people that I talked to literally had the exact same reaction to when I just bring a kid's name up. And the reaction was this. I asked two different people around the program. I said, what are your thoughts on Jeremiah Love? And they both did the exact same thing about 3 days apart. They just started laughing and then just said, freak. And then Marcus Freeman said, like, the same exact thing today. FYI, Marcus Freeman's not one of my sources. Okay.
I mean, the head coach is not your source.
No.
Dude, you better step it up a little bit.
I know. Yeah, because Brian Kelly was always giving me intel.
I mean, I know you guys are like buddies. You Euchre night and stuff.
The point being, right, is okay, that's great. You're a freak athlete. Okay. I mean, James Jett was a Olympic gold medalist, and he was not a very good football player. Right. So it was good to see Jeremiah out there and looking great. Now it's about, okay, now let's get the finer points of the position. But and you just can't teach the speed that those kids brought to the table. And when you look at how well Jabron played today, I thought Devin Ford played good football today, and what we saw, they just got to clean up their technique. The two younger guys that haven't played a lot of running back need to clean up their technique. But this is the most just physically gifted running back 1 to 5 I've ever seen. I mean, Notre Dame has rarely had 5-man running back rooms, of scholarship players. And this is, I mean, whoever the number 5 is a guy that in past years is a 1 or a 2. I'm dead. I'm not joking.
I know you're not
joking. They're either a 1 or a 2. I'm not joking. I think the only year they wouldn't have been even last year. I mean, Jadarian Price was slated to maybe be the 1 last year, according to people we talked to. But, I mean, Jabron Payne in past years is a starter. I mean, there are teams in Brian Kelly's tenure that Jabron Payne, from what we saw from him in the spring and today, is a starter. At the very least, he's 1B.
Right.
And
getting a lot of touches.
Yeah, right. And he's battling just to be number 2.
Right.
So that was encouraging. We had hoped it would be good. We'd hyped it up quite a bit. And we got to see what they do with the pads on, because at the end of the day, we know a lot of running backs look phenomenal when they can't be tackled.
Right.
But we've seen enough film of all these kids that I'm not worried about that. Right.
I will say this.
This is a tremendous
year.
No,
I will say this about the running back room. Look, Audric is the number 1. He's RB1, right? And there's a question in the chat about, could he drop to 3 with all what you guys are talking about and all these different things? Look, he's RB1, right?
Who, Audric Estime?
Yeah.
Oh,
Audric
100%,
Estime.
guys.
Right.
Like,
But
right.
what I am going to say is I hope that he has the kind of season that we think he's going to have and that he gets a chance to go off to the NFL and all that. Because you give this stable of running backs behind him another year, and they're going to be battling for some of those reps, man.
Right.
I'm just
Vince, here's why it's important to focus on the other backs. Audric is the dude. We know who he is.
Absolutely.
Because here's something that as all these fast backs can't do. They can't do what Audric does either. Like, he can't run fast like they do.
Right.
But they can't do some things. They can't face plant a guy into the turf in Syracuse like Audric did last year.
Exactly.
Right? He's got great feet. We've never said he's a burner. But if these guys continue, this is a day one, no pads, right? But if these guys can continue to grow and develop, and Jabron keeps building on what we saw from him and what he did with pads on, if Jadarian can clean up the footwork and stay healthy, if Jeremiah can learn, Devin Ford, what it means is they don't need Audric to be that 20-touch guy.
Right.
Week after week after week, which to Vince, you brought up when we did the running back preview. You need Audric healthy for September 23rd, September 9th, September 23rd. What's the October? What's the weekend they play USC? Is it like the 16th or something like that?
Pulling it up right now. Let's see. USC is the 20 or the 14th of October.
14th.
Yeah.
And then you need him healthy for November 4th.
Right.
When you play Clemson. And then, of course, the postseason. Like, you
Right.
don't need him. You shouldn't need him to beat Tennessee State, Central Michigan, but you might if you don't have a lot of faith in your other running backs.
Agreed.
And that's the whole point is Audric will get his. I don't need Audric to run for 1,700 yards this year.
No.
We talked about this. I need him to be, what was the number I said? 16 total?
Yeah.
1,600 total with rushing and receiving, because he's going to have some big games. But if I can get him 9 carries for 120 yards in the first quarter and a half against Tennessee State, right? Hey, you're good, right?
Exactly.
Call it a day, because I'm going to need you to really ball out next week, because I may need you for 25 next week against Raleigh.
Yeah.
And that's what the other running backs can't do right now, is they can't be that bell cow for 25 to beat NC State or Ohio State.
Right.
And so Audric is still number one. Don't
still
get it twisted.
Right.
Which is why we paid no attention to him. If we thought there was a potential for him to get beat out, we'd have been like, let's compare these guys to Audric Estime. It's just like, do I really need to watch Joe Walt today?
Right.
Here's when I watched.
Well, we did, though.
I watched him and
watched a couple of one-on-ones.
I was watching the other guy, and I was like, that guy had no chance. Actually, that's not what you said. But so, I saw him in stretch. Okay, he looks like had a good summer. Okay, move on. I don't need to watch him anymore. Right, like that. That's how it was in 2015 with Jalen Smith. Okay, Jalen didn't eat pizzas every day. Okay, he looks great. All right, cool. I can move on. I don't need to watch him anymore. I don't need to watch Will Fuller anymore in 2015 in practice. I'm going to watch other guys.
Right.
And that's who Joe Walt is. That's who Audric is. So, but those other guys look great. So, 2 through 5 right now is as deep as Notre Dame's ever been.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, athletically anyway.
If all the information I had was from today, I don't know that I would be all that upset if I could make an argument for any one of those 4 guys to be the second guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, all right. If you told me, I went and had a concussion and I was knocked out for the next 4 weeks and you're going into Navy and you're like, hey, whatever is the number 2 running back. Oh, okay, cool. Let's go. Let's head to the game. I would believe it and I would be fine with it. I really would. There's that much talent in this room, man. And we cognitively knew it, but then we got to see it today. And it's like, okay, yeah, we were definitely right about that.
Yeah. Now, the thing too is again, you don't want to have to play without Audric, because he's still your guy. He's still your bell cow. But the point is this is a really deep group. Yeah. Wide receiver had an interesting day today, Vince.
They did. I agree.
They were about what I thought they would be day one. There's talent there. There's some inconsistency there. They're going up against a really good secondary.
Correct.
And 4 guys in particular looked really good today in the secondary, which we'll get to. But you know what I liked, Vince? There's an obvious emphasis on better press moves, to the point where sometimes they were doing when they didn't need to. There's one time, I think it was Rico Flores did this move, and Coach Stuckey gets on him, and he's like, that dude's 4 yards off of you and just sitting there Like you're doing all this stuff, and he's just sitting there waiting.
Right.
You attack, eat up the cushion first before you do that. And just because now you're overthinking it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like when
I'm talking about.
It's like when, like in Indiana Jones, and the guy's doing all these whip moves and everything, and Indiana Jones just pulls out his gun. He's like,
"Oh yeah, he had a sword, right?" He was like doing
is that what it was? Yeah,
okay. And he's like, "Screw this."
Yeah.
It's a great scene. Correct.
That's what it was like. It was like, okay, you don't need to do all of that. Like that's not necessary. Yeah,
and that's it, exactly. But there was a concerted effort to say, hey, we got to be better off the ball. Like there was that one route where Jaden Greathouse just destroyed Ramon Henderson off the snap with a great press for him. He just stuttered, bam, beat him inside. He stuttered, leaned him in, then snapped it hard out, got Ramon to bite, beat him inside. Ramon, who's so fast, who's much faster than Jaden, finally catches up to him. But by the time he catches up to him, then Jaden hit him with a top end and beats him inside for a touchdown. And you're like, okay, yeah, there you go. Freshman, good job, right? And they're still some of the veterans are actually need more work with that stuff than Jaden does, which again is what we talked about, is that kid's just really advanced. But there was a concerted effort on that. But the thing I liked, Vince, is they battled, right? When they lost, they battled. Yeah. There's a lot of this back and forth, like them and Jaden Mickey. Like, they didn't take any. Like, we won't say what was said, but like Jaden was running his mouth, and one of the receivers said something. You're like, dang, like
it was savage.
Ouch! Y'all are teammates, right? Like, but they battled, right? They did not have a great day. We said this. The defense is going to be ahead of the offense early. We said that, right? We warned people for that. I love the compete level, though. Even Deion Colsey, who had a couple drops today, and you're like, come on, man, like you got to make that grab. I thought he competed today. I thought he battled today. He's got to clean up his release, and he's always going to be a guy that's going to have a little bit of a harder time with some of that release stuff because he's a bigger guy. He's a longer limbed guy. He's not going to be able to have releases like 6'1" Jaden Greathouse had or 5'9" Chris Tyree had. But he battled today. I thought Jaden Thomas had a bit of a rough day today, but he was going against, I think, like Benjamin Morrison almost every time he took a rep. And that's rough. You know what I liked? I think there was one rep where we saw Tobias against someone not named Cam Hart or Benjamin Morrison. I think those things are going to help them a ton.
But I love
the receivers, especially. They're going to help them a ton. There was one particular play where I thought Tobias had a great release against Benjamin Morrison and got a step on him. And Sam threw the ball perfectly. I mean, just high.
Right here.
And he's coming down with it, and Benjamin punches it out.
Yeah.
And that's an All-American play right there. But what did I say to you? I said, that's a great coaching point for Chancey Stuckey.
Yep.
Because Tobias, you made a great release. He plucked that ball out of the air. So he made, again, what do we say, Vince?
Play.
We want guys that make hard plays look easy.
Yeah.
Tobias does that. And he did that, but it was like, you're 6'4", he's 6 foot. You caught that ball high, leave it up there. And if he punches at it, bring it back. You're on the back line. Instead, he brought it down right into Benjamin's hands.
Yeah.
Teaching point.
Right.
Coaching point. Hey, here's what we do. Here's what you do on that. That's a drill that I used to work on my receivers is when you high point a ball, if that guy's shooting his hand up, you either leave it up or you bring it back. Don't bring it back down into his hands.
Yeah.
Right. And so teaching point, coaching point. But you got to love what he did to get in position to where we all thought he had a touchdown until Benjamin kind of punched it out.
Right.
No, they did not struggle today. Anyone that told you they struggle today, with all due respect, doesn't know what a day one is supposed to look like.
Correct. That's why I wanted to bring that up. When you
have the DBs that Notre Dame has. This is what we tried to warn you all about this before because we've actually coached. If your receivers are dominating your DBs on day one,
long year,
or you have great veteran receivers, like the one time we can remember that was 2018, right, with Claypool and Boykin. Well, why? They were a foot taller than the corners, but they were veterans. They were a senior and a junior who've played a lot of football. These are freshmen, sophomores, and a couple juniors who haven't played a ton of football. Your DB should be better today, but they made some good plays too. I mean, Tobias got that play where he got broken up by Benjamin. There's another play he beat Cam for a touchdown. Great release, smoked Cam for a touchdown, right?
And there was another time where he was open for a touchdown. He just got overthrown. I mean, that's not on the receiver,
right?
I mean, he had a step.
That was Hartman, right? I thought overthrew him.
Yeah,
on that
it was. It was Sam Hartman. Yeah.
Yep. So no, they didn't struggle today. They battled. That's the key. I mean, they battled. You if your DBs aren't, especially the makeup of this team, aren't doing that, And here's the other thing. I thought Chris Tyree had a great day.
Oh, he had a
well. He
great
had
day.
a really here's what I mean by that. Still working on the route running stuff, but he looked a little sharper today. But he was catching the ball really clean. He fought the ball a little bit in the spring. Like, sometimes
you could tell he was converting. Like that's what it looked like. He was
Marcus Freeman
learning.
said today that Chancey Stuckey has actually tracked how many passes he's caught this off season. It's like 18,000 or something like that.
Really?
And he wasn't joking. He wasn't like, man, he caught like 18,000 ball. He was like, no, I think it was like, I have to ask Coach Stuckey for the specific number, but I think it was like 18,000. Like he was being serious. And I was like, okay, this is a kid that's taking his craft seriously.
Work, man.
The drop that we talked about, the great ball that Hartman threw, that was not an easy catch because he dropped it. One of the hardest catches to make as a receiver.
Yep.
And Vince, we both played receiver at some point in time in our careers. You in high school, I did it for like 2 games in high school and then my freshman year of college. The hardest ball to catch for me, and this was also true in baseball, is that one that comes directly over your head.
Yep.
So it doesn't come here, but it comes here, and that's what that ball from Hartman threw to him. And he needed to throw it there because the angle, that's the only place you could throw it. But Tyree tracked it, and then boom, just easy. And then the other one was on that he caught a corner route for a touchdown that Hartman threw kind of it needed to be low, but he threw it a little too low.
He went down and got it.
And he went down and got it and rolled underneath it. And I was like, okay, this kid's figuring it out. He looked, tell you what, today, Vince, in the spring, Chris Tyree looked like a running back trying to convert to receiver.
Agreed.
Today, he looked like a slot receiver.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
And again, it's day one, so take the personnel choices for what they are. But he got the first team slot reps, and they pushed Thomas out.
Jaden was in the boundary.
Yeah, they pushed him out to the boundary. And so, is that something that's going to continue? We'll see. But
they're going to move Jaden all around. But they want to get Chris Tyree reps.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. They know Jaden Thomas can play the slot. That's where he got almost all his production last year.
Absolutely.
Chris needs that work. And you need to see if Jaden can play outside. That's still a bit of a question mark. Can Jaden be a full-time outside guy?
But they were giving him the reps, and he made it pay off. And like we said earlier in the show, there were plays that were designed to go to Chris Tyree. I mean, I'm convinced of it. Without looking at the playbook, I'm convinced that plays were designed to go to Chris Tyree.
It seemed like they were,
but he paid it off, though. You know what I mean? Like he paid it off, and that's not always the case either. So he had a good day. He had a really good day one. Let's see if he can build on it tomorrow, obviously. But he had a really good day one, in my opinion. And we talked when we were doing the wide receiver breakdown a couple weeks ago. And we talked about Chris Tyree, and I truly believe this. If he can reach his ceiling as a slot receiver, and we saw pieces of it today. If he can reach his ceiling, he is the X factor in this offense, man, because he is a matchup nightmare. You're telling me that there's a safety or an outside linebacker or a nickel that's going to be able to keep up with Chris Tyree?
No, not many.
Not many.
No, not that.
You know what I mean? Like,
if he knows what he's doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how he operates here over the next 4 weeks. You know what I mean? At least what we're allowed to see, and then how he operates once we get to games. And if this is step one and he continues to just get a little bit better and a little bit better, and there's always going to be a dip, and that's how fall camp works. But if he can build off of today, he could become that X factor, Brian. He could.
Yes, and there's no question. Question. Braylon James is very much a work in progress too, Vince, as a receiver, but he can move. Even today, what they were doing short field stuff, like he beat Jade Mickey. That fade route he had that quick jab, beat him outside. Jade made a great play on it. Braylon just outplayed him for the ball. Great focus. I thought the ball went right through Jaden's hands, actually.
Right here.
Braylon was locked in on it, hauled it in, made the catch, played with some energy. I thought he had a good day. He just is going to need a lot of work. I didn't see I thought Rico was telegraphing routes. Like Rico was like, you know what Rico was today for me, Vince? I didn't see him a ton, but when I did, probably about 6 or 7 routes, he was telegraphing stuff today. Like he was trying to get a little too fancy. I felt like he was at like a 7-on-7 tournament.
Yeah.
Right today. Like he was trying to get let's get real cute and do all this. And it's like, hey man, that works at a 7-on-7 tournament, but I got a pass rush coming up for my quarterback right now. Like you can't do all that. And that's something I thought Coach Stuckey was kind of getting on him a little bit about today. Like, hey man, eat up this cushion, then do something.
Yeah.
But Great House was really good. I thought Tyree had a really good day. I thought Tobias had a pretty good day considering. Dion,
a couple more plays I'd like to see him make, but
yeah. Well, and then the one is just like, look, do a better job of finishing at the catch point.
Right.
Lesson learned.
Look,
because
super athletic play by both guys. Like super, like
here's the deal, Vince. With Tobias, the thing that's going to be good, and this is something that'll be good for Dion if the light goes on for Dion. With Tobias, he's so talented that if he was playing against lesser corners, he'd be getting away with stuff that you may not be able to get away with against Ohio State, Good USC, call. Georgia, Alabama.
Good call.
Because he's just like, dude, he's like this guy can't guard him.
Just a man amongst boys.
I thought it was good that today he was either matched up against Clarence Lewis once, maybe twice, who's pretty strong, but he was matched up against Cam Hart and Benjamin Morrison all day. And if I'm the receivers coach, I would tell Tobias, I don't ever want to see you take a rep against anyone not named one of these two guys.
Yeah.
Like ever.
Absolutely.
And I would make sure that it happened. And I would say too, I would say the same thing if I'm Mickens if I'm Benjamin or Cam, I'm like, I want you guys going up against Jaden, Dion, and Tobias. Right. I mean, that kind of thing. So I really felt, Vince, that the receivers had a good first day. If you understand what you're looking for from receivers in the first day. If I'm the coach, am I in the film room tonight praising them for having a good day? No, I'm not. I'm getting on them. I'm getting on them. But as an analyst saying, look, there's things that they got to clean up. I thought they competed. Now they got to get sharper.
Yep.
Now they got to enhance stuff. Now they got to win some of those one-on-one battles, but they won some of them. I mean, we talked about some of the great plays that were made from that group, but I thought they had a good first day. Not great by any stretch, but a good first day.
Sure. You can see the depth, all that stuff. I mean, you can, it's good.
Tight end room is, I mean, you could tell, I don't think Mitchell Evans he looked a little like he was maybe limited today. Like he didn't take a ton of reps today. At least I didn't see him take a ton of reps today. So I don't know if he was still limited for some reason. We didn't see Eli Raridan take any team reps. We saw him going through drills and he's really fast.
Yeah.
But he didn't take any 1-on-1, 7-on-7 or team reps today. Cooper Flanagan had a couple catches. He's a big boy. He is a big boy. But the star of the show at tight end for me today, and the tight ends weren't thrown to a ton today, and when it was mostly like little option routes and
a lot of 7-on. They got stuff on 7-on-7s or the Y options.
Yeah, the short stuff, except for one guy, and that was Holden Stace. Man. He looks more like a receiver than he does a tight end. The way he not physically. I mean, physically he's a big kid. But just the way he runs, Vince, I mean, he runs routes like a receiver. I mean, he is a sharp route runner. Had a really nice backline touchdown grab. Was that 7-on-7 or team? It was 7-on-7, wasn't it?
I think it was 7s. Yeah, I think it was.
Just did a nice job finding that soft spot, made a really good grab. Holden Stace, to me, of the tight ends, had the best day of work, in my opinion, without question.
He was surprising in that he was getting a lot of first-team reps, but you could tell that he earned them. And again, I don't know if Mitchell was limited or whatever.
We're not saying he was.
We don't know.
Saying like I just didn't see him as much.
Sure.
And a couple times it looked like he was just.
It could be because
laboring.
He just
could be
is really good. I don't know. I'm speculating, but the reps that Holden Stays was able to get on the field for, he impressed. I mean, he impressed, and they moved him out. He was playing in the slot at times. He was playing attached. He was playing kind of that H-back role. Like they moved him around too. And man, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be, whether he's 1, whether he's 2, whatever, man, having 13 on the field is going to give Notre Dame an advantage offensively. No doubt about it.
Yeah, he impressed me today.
Yeah.
We didn't see a ton from the tight ends other than him, just opportunity-wise.
And we're not going to know anything about tight ends blocking either. Like,
none. No.
We're not going to get that.
I did like Kevin Bauman looked healthy. That was good. He's just not as athletic right now as the other tight ends, but he was healthy. That was good. He made a couple contested grabs on option routes. It was good to see him out there healthy as well. Offensive line-wise, Vince, the reality is we're not going to have a lot to talk about the offensive linemen. We're just not, because there's no pads on. But we did have some observations today. Just a heads up on what the alignments look like. First team offense left to right was Joe Alt, Billy Schrouth, Zeke Correll, Andrew Kristofic, and Blake Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Second team was Tosh Baker. Left guard, it was Coogan, Pat Coogan at left guard. And then you had Ashton Craig at center. You had Rocco Spindler at right guard and Emil Wagner at right tackle. And I feel like I'm drawing a blank at left guard. I thought it was Coogan at left guard. And then third team, it was Jagasol was at left tackle. I actually have it in my report.
I was trying to look up here.
Yeah,
there we go.
I have my offensive report here. I believe I had it in that.
You did. Okay, here we go. So the second group was Baker, Coogan, Craig, Spindler, Wagner.
That's right. Okay, so left guard with the third group was Ty Chan. I actually had Joe Otting written in that report, and because I saw him take one, but it actually Quinn Murphy was getting most of the third team reps at center. She had Charles Jagasol at left tackle, Ty Chan at left guard, Joe Otting at center, Sam Pendleton at right guard, and Sullivan Absher at right tackle. Couple observations, Vince. Obviously, I thought Billy Schrouth had a really good day today from what we could see. He was moving really well. I talked to a source this summer that said, when Billy knows what he's doing, he's really good. Mm-hmm. It's just he's a young guy that hasn't played really hardly any football. He practiced last year, but didn't play in any games. It's just about getting him to be where he can be more consistently knowing what he's doing. Today, he looked like he knew what he was doing, playing with really good pad level, came off well, getting to the second level with ease. He had a great backside second level block where he blocked the linebacker. He beat a linebacker to the spot like across the field. Really nice job by him today. I thought he looked good. Rocco Spindler looks like a different kid. He's listed as 11 pounds lighter on the roster, and he looks lighter. His body, he had the biggest body transformation of any offensive lineman this offseason.
No doubt.
Even from spring, Vince.
He doesn't look like he looked before.
He looks like the kid we thought he was going to be coming to high school. Now, we don't know if he's going to play like it, but he's clearly put the work in. And the thing we noticed, because there was 2 plays in a row we watched him, and we both kind of looked at each other like, yeah, I've never seen that from Rocco before.
One-on-ones was one of them.
Right. He had that good base. He was like, who was it against? It was against Onye? I'm trying to remember who it was against. Like, it was somebody. It was like either Onye or Riley Mills. I think it was Onye because Billy Schrouth had the one where he just really stoned Riley Mills on that one. Yeah, but because Riley Mills,
I remember you saying Zeke had a really good rep against Onye. I remember that.
Riley Mills in the spring would just power rush Billy Schrouth and just whoop him. Mm-hmm. So he tried to go back to that today, and Billy wasn't having it, which is a great thing to see. But he had a really nice pass set where he just good base, slid his feet, beat the guy to the spot. He had a play where he pulled outside. It was like, okay. And then the other one was they were running I think it was a zone play where he was comboing inside. So it was coming back to him, then worked to the second level, kept his base, didn't look sloppy. No one's going to mistake him for, a guy that's like super athletic, but he looked really clean athletically today. His feet moved better than because that's been our biggest knock is, man, this guy's got really heavy feet, man. It's like really heavy feet.
Right.
He looked like the kid we hoped he would be coming out of high school. He looked really good today. Moved really well today. I thought Andrew Kristofic also had a good practice from what we saw, but we know who Andrew is, right? But with Rocco, it's good to see that. That was probably my biggest takeaway was how good
his feet.
Billy Schrouth and Rocco Spindler moved today. It was probably my biggest O-line takeaway, Vince.
No doubt about it. And it was like Billy looked a little veteranish. I want to say like he didn't like in the spring. There were times when he would dominate, and then there were times that he just looked a little bit lost. He kind of lost some of that lostness. He looked prepared to dominate on every rep. I mean, that's what I got out of Billy, and that was really good to see because we're not talking about that much time that has passed since then to now. You know what I mean? And so that was really great to see. I will say that Andrew Kristofic has gotten bigger. I don't know if it shows up on the roster, but he just looks bigger.
Looks a little thicker.
Yeah, exactly. Now let's see how he plays with that weight. And then, like you said, I'm not going to rehash everything that you said about Rocco, but his feet, we've never seen his feet like that in a Notre Dame uniform.
Yeah.
Period. And the one-on-one, it's burned in my memory. whoever he was going up against tried an inside move, got stoned, and then tried an outside move.
Tried to spin out, right?
Tried to spin out of it to the outside, and Rocco just went with him and continued to stone him. Like it was a really, really nice play. It was a really, and you and I both looked at each other like, wait a second, was that 50? Oh,
yeah.
Like,
yeah. I was like, oh, please tell me that was Rocco. Please tell me that was Rocco. Please tell me that was Rocco.
Yeah.
He looked good today. Blake Fisher moved really well today. I want to see him with the pads on because great. He looked athletic. I'm just worried he didn't put any weight on. He's slimmed down.
Yeah.
I hope that he hasn't lost power. That's my only concern. But I mean, he had a couple perimeter blocks where it's like, okay, yeah, Blake's moving.
He's moving. He can move.
I just need to see if he still has his power. That's the thing I need to see. But yeah, he was moving pretty well today. Young guys wise, I thought Sam Pendleton moves his feet. He's got really good footwork. Like he's a little bit more athletic than I thought he was going to be. And the other one too is Ashton Craig was like 260 when he committed Notre Dame. He's now like 306, 307 on the roster. It's a lot of weight for a redshirt freshman. And I'm like, man, I hope he didn't put on too much weight. He moves really well at center. Like that kid's got an incredibly bright future at center, Vince. And he was athletically, he looked really good today.
Joe Rudolph was really working with him today.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it was a point of emphasis for, to work with it. I don't know. It just felt like he was giving him a lot today, in a good way. I'm not saying that like he was bashing him or anything like that. Like it just felt like, you know what, this is a guy we're going to put some time into, and he was really working with him at center. And it was paying off. Like I was impressed with the way he was, they kept banging on him for some fundamental things. He would snap and then not step and, or whatever. But like
that part's still a work in progress.
And it will be. I mean, it's going to be. And he's not starting. And so it can be a work in progress, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but they were really working with Ashton Craig. And, based on his size, man, I think it really pay off. I mean,
he looked
really
good.
Pay off.
And I didn't watch a ton of Charles Jagusah all day. He moved well. But I'll say this, Vince, that is one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen in my entire life. And dude, he's not fat. He's not like, wow, that kid's got to lose. Like, remember when he first saw Lewis Nix, you're like, that young man's going to need to lose a lot of weight. Like,
right.
He was close to 400 pounds. Charles is not that. He's just massive. He's just he's the closest thing. He's like a taller version of Quentin Nelson. Like, remember how Quentin was just big? Like Quentin, I remember one year they had him like 330, 340, and you're like, is he too big? I'm like, no, he's not. He's not too big. Like he's just broad shoulders,
right?
Big thighs, big calves, big wrists, big forearms, big head, big hands, big feet. He's just big.
Yeah.
Like somebody else his size, like his height, that weighed what Quentin Nelson would have weighed, 330, 340 Notre Dame, would have looked fat. Yes. Quentin is just huge. Charles Jagusah is a lot like that. He's not fat. He's just massive.
Oh, my gosh.
Just big shoulders, big behind, like, right. in a football standpoint, big thighs, like just broad shoulders, big hands, big feet. He moves clean. I mean, I never really saw him like turn it loose today, but, going through drills, I mean, he comes off really well. I think there's a rep of him. Was there a rep of him in the breakdown that you and I saw today? Trying to find it.
I'll tell you what, you want to talk about him being big. I mean, I would love to know the number of families that had to donate fabric for them to make his shorts.
I know, right?
He's just a big dude. I mean, there's just a lot of him around.
That was not him. That was somebody else.
And I mean that in the nicest way possible because he is built like a house.
Yeah, he is. He's a impressive looking young man. There's a lot of guys like this. Is a really impressive looking group, Vince.
It really is.
It really is. Is Michael? We need to ask about Michael Carmody because I didn't see him taking any first or second team or third team reps today, but he was going through drills, so I don't know what's going on with him. So I'll have to ask about that. The only other guy that I really had a chance to notice today, I thought Tosh Baker had a really good day today.
Okay.
He's moving people a lot better. Like I was even I saw it in the stuff that we saw, but even in the video you sent me, they worked a combo block and Tosh came off with some little bit more punch than we usually see from Tosh.
Yeah.
That was good to see. That was good to see because we've heard that, right? We've heard that this offseason. We've heard that Tosh is playing really well. And like, okay, that's great. I need to see it now. I just need to see it. And
Sure.
we did. I mean, as
Yeah.
far as just movement wise, we'll see what he does when the pads come on. But I don't, that's not really, I thought he moved well today. I thought he played with some punch that he hasn't really done in the past. So I was pleased with what I saw from him.
Well, certain things you don't need to see pads. You can still see punch. You can still see footwork. I mean, there's certain things you can definitely see. But yeah, pads for an offensive lineman are pretty important, to be honest.
So Vince, I think we kind of wrapped up the offense. Anything else you want to kind of get into? Feel good?
Everything we talked about going into fall camp about the offense and, how we felt about the offense and we feel good about the offense and all of those different things. One day of practice didn't sway my thoughts. I will say that. Yeah. I didn't sway my thoughts in a negative way. I still feel very good about our predictions and about what we feel like this offense can be. And I'm kind of excited to get back at it tomorrow to see, okay, let's take a step. Let's see what the next step is in the progression of this team offensively. I'm very excited about this offense.
A lot to work on. But a lot of talent. A lot of talent. Move over to the defensive side of the ball, Vince.
Absolutely.
We didn't get to see as much of the defense today for a couple reasons. Number one, so we went outside early on the 2 practice fields, and they had the defense on the far practice field, and it's really hard to see from way over there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things obstructing the view. So like in a lot of the individual, we don't get to see a whole lot of that.
And they were doing a lot of recognition defensively in their individual stuff.
Explain what that means, Vince, because that's not going to be a full speed type thing.
Exactly. So they were doing a lot of they were working, like linebackers were working on blitz timing. They were doing that. The defensive line, and it's against bags. Like it's one guy against a bag, just kind of working their footwork and some delays and like things like that. And then, on the defensive line, they're just working on some get offs. They were working on, getting into the gap and some angles and, things like that. Just more like kind of stances and starts is the best way to put it. If you're a coach, you don't understand what that means, but it's not really going up against anybody per se. They did some one-on-ones with the offensive line. We saw that. And then they did team. And other than that, it was a lot of rec. They would be, so for example, they had the defense out without helmets on. And the offense would run kind of a half-speed play, and the defense would react to it.
Right.
They're doing it without helmets.
Right gap.
I mean, it was just recognition. Okay, well, when this guy goes here, I go here, that kind of a thing. So it was a lot of rec defensively today. And it was hot. It was muggy. Like, they were being smart with the way that they were doing things. I mean, halfway through the first individual drill, the offensive linemen were stripping down and like taking off their undershirts and just, like it was hot and muggy. Like, and so they were smart about the way they handled practice, I think, in a lot of ways.
So with that in mind, we didn't get to see a whole lot today from the front 7. We saw a lot of the secondary.
Yes, we did.
That doesn't mean we didn't have some impressions of the front. And I'll watch the defense more as we go into more practices because you can't watch everything on a certain day. So today we were kind of offense, secondary driven. A couple observations from the defense. They had Tyson Ford playing big end. He's down about 18 pounds. He was 292 in the spring. He's down to 274. Moving well. We saw Armel Mookum playing some inside. We saw Brendan Vernon playing big end. Josh Burnham playing a little bit of was playing Viper today.
Mm-hmm.
A couple observations as far as how guys looked. I think Boubacar Traore might be one of the longest people I've ever seen with arm length wise. He's got incredibly long arms. He's lost some bad weight that he had in high school, so that's good. He's down to 237. He's going to put that back on in a hurry. Like, he's going to put that weight back on in a hurry. He's got a great frame. Jason Onye, to me, and Riley Mills probably had, or Gabriel Ruby had 2 of the more flashy plays today that I saw. You know who was the play against Rocco? I think it was Donovan Heinisch. That's who was going against Rocco.
Yes, it was.
And Donovan's a guy that's usually really hard to defend in pass. That's Donovan's
quick.
wheelhouse.
Quick. He's got some moves.
He's really good with leverage.
Yeah.
I thought Onye and Rubio had a couple of the better plays today. Onye's really quick off the line. He's really quick off the line. Outside of that, Vince, I personally didn't see a whole lot from the D-line today.
Yeah, it was just more like where they're lining up, who's lining up where, that kind of stuff. And again, without pads on, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of get a read on what defensive linemen are doing. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's
do they look like they're in shape? And
right.
Then you wait till the pads come on, pretty much.
Right.
Now, linebacker, we didn't see a ton, but there were some things we talked about. And we saw Jack Kaiser playing Will and Rover today, which is not unexpected. And that guy's really fast. I know there's some that don't believe it. There was a play, they ran a slide route to a running back. I haven't seen a linebacker explode on this route since Jeremiah Wusu-Koroma was here. So from where we're sitting, the offense is going left to right. And I think it was Jadarian Price just runs a little slide route. That basically is like running backs in shotgun, and he just kind of goes 3 yards like in like a little just slides, little quick arrow. Some people call it arrow, whatever. And I'm seeing the left tackle. So I see the left tackle, and then I see Jadarian Price. I think it was Jadarian Price out in the flats. And he's all by himself. I'm like, uh-oh. Quarterback's going to – and so the quarterback gets to right here, and as soon as the ball comes out of his hand, I see this white lightning, and I don't mean white like the color of his skin, but the defense wears white.
He's wearing his jersey, yeah.
I got to tell you a funny story about my wife. And so about that. So, and I just, this white blur, just boom. And just eats. I mean, as soon as the ball gets there, Jack Kaiser hits the running back. I'm like, when the quarterback was here, he wasn't even in my line of sight. He just comes out of nowhere.
We're talking like a 10-yard pass, by the way. Like, it's not,
Yeah, it wasn't like a deep out cut. It was like when Vince talking about 10 yards, talking about from the quarterback to the running back.
Correct. That's
10 yards.
That's what I was referring to. Yes.
Correct. I thought Jaden Osbury had a couple really impressive plays in cover. He is a very natural cover player. Like they were running a crosser and he is dropping. He sees the crosser from the other side and he just squats on it and drives and beats the guy to the spot. And they're running a lot of that route today, but he didn't jump that after they'd run 4 or 5. That was one of the first crosses we saw. And then none of the other linebackers really picked it up like that. I thought Nolan Ziegler looked a little tentative today. He wasn't as downhill. Jalen Sneed, I didn't see a lot from him. He was out there a bunch. I just didn't see him really making any plays. But I thought Jaden Osbury flashed to me today. Jack Kaiser flashed to me today in the stuff we saw.
Wasn't there another one?
Those two kids can flat out run, man.
Wasn't there another one where Jack got in on Hartman? Like,
yes. I forgot about the play that Jack and JD blew up. They ran that toss.
Yeah.
And Jack and JD just blew it up. Because they outran the offensive line to the play.
Right.
Well, I think it was Jack, first of all, beats the leading the pull guy, and just rocks him back and forces the cutback. And then JD beat the guy trying to steal him off to the spot, and he's right there. And running back has to kind of stop, and eventually the rest of the defense gets there for like a -1, a +1. It was like a really short gain.
Yep.
That was the other one we saw. But outside of that, again, evaluating linebackers without pads on, it's just, okay, how do they run? And we already knew they could run. So,
very difficult,
Not a ton from that I saw today from the linebackers.
But one thing we did see a lot from was the secondary and specifically the corners. I
saw a lot from the safeties today.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw more from the corners, I think, than I did from the safeties.
Let's get into events. Let's talk corner play.
Yeah.
Let's go Benjamin Morrison, because he was a dude today.
So
let's start with him.
Funny story, and I'll be the first one to tell the story.
Wait. Can I tell the story about my wife first real quick?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So my wife is my photographer. She's a great photographer. She's had like 5 or 6 cover shots when I was a BGI of the magazine. So like really great photographer. And so she's trying to find some video, some photos. She's going through all the thousands of pictures she took today. And I'm like, so I have a couple really good offensive shots that she's found. And so I need a defensive one. And so she's going through, she goes, I can't find any photos of white guys. She goes, no, not what I mean. I mean, the guys wearing white jerseys, like the defensive guys. She was mortified because she didn't mean it like that. She just meant like, no, she's looking for, she's like blue guys and white guys. That's what she's saying. Like, she's looking for jersey. She's like, nope, that's not what I meant. It's not what I meant. That's not. I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, I don't need a white guy, honey. I just need a guy in a white jersey. She's like, that's not funny. But that was really cool. But yeah, she got some really good shots from today. But that was the white guy story that I had to tell real quick. But anyway, corner. What's your funny story, Vince?
Well, I can't believe you haven't called me out on it yet, to be honest with you. So we're watching 7. I think it was 7-on-7 or whatever, and Benjamin Morrison makes a hell of a play, and I lean over and I go, wait, who's number 20? He goes, I hope you're kidding, right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm kidding. That was my bad. Like all of a sudden, it was just like
seriously,
brain fart city. I was like, okay, yeah, But but no,
pretty good.
But yeah, that guy that I didn't know who he was, he's pretty stinking good. Had a pick 6 on Hartman at one point. I mean, he battled all night or all day, I should say, and was just really, really good. I mean, he hasn't taken a step back. Let's put it that way.
No, he looked a little quicker, a little bit more explosive. The big thing for me though is he looked a lot stronger today.
Yeah.
And
that was something that we talked about last year. It's like, hey, give this kid an off season and he's going to get a little bit more, rear end behind him, a little bit more strength. And he's going to be able, like, there were some times like in the Clemson game where he just got run over, but just held on for dear life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's not afraid to stick his nose in.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Just to get stronger.
Get a little bit stronger. He's going to be able to make those plays and not get run over at the same time. And we saw some of that today.
One of my biggest takeaways from the secondary today, Vince, and I think Benjamin Morrison was the catalyst for it, but he was certainly not alone. They got their hands on a lot of passes today.
Yeah, they did. A lot of I wrote down PBU.
A lot.
When we were tracking stuff.
And it wasn't just him. He was one of them. I thought Cam Hart had an okay day. Like he had a couple impressive reps, he got beat, by Tobias. Tobias is the only person that beats Cam. I mean, that's it. He had a solid day. I didn't pay a ton of attention to him. But yeah, Benjamin was outstanding today. It just just a little bit more confident in his off-ball stuff, I thought. It just looked like he was willing to kind of use, like last year, he just what made him, he just would line up, play press man, and cover you. Right. And we saw that today. But today we actually saw him play the mind game a little bit. Like that's what that pick was against Sam Hartman. Is like, okay, I'm gonna let this guy do whatever he's gonna do because I know what he's about to do. And then I'm going to jump it and pick it off. Like that's not the kind of picks that we saw him get last year. All his picks were more the BC one kind of, but that was just a terrible ball by the quarterback. And it was a comeback route. He was covering that guy man to man. It's just a comeback route. Poorly, shouldn't have thrown the ball. So I thought he was very good. And then of course the play that he made on Tobias Merriweather was just a tremendous play. I mean, it's a really good ball, really good, initial catch, just an even better defensive play by an All-American. But he wasn't alone. I thought Chance Tucker had a good day today. I thought he had a couple good breakups. I thought Clarence Lewis was really physical in coverage today. And to me, that's a good sign because that's a guy that has to know I'm not fast enough to run with guys like Benjamin and Cam and can do. So I've got to be savvy, but I've got to be physical. We've heard from some sources that he's gotten a lot stronger this offseason, and he was using it today. Both outside and of course in the nickel and the slot. He was very physical with receivers. Now, at times I think a little too physical, meaning like, okay, you can't beat a guy up like that 9 yards down the field. Like they weren't throwing any flags today.
Right.
And I actually like the fact that receivers weren't kind of constantly complaining about. There were several plays where they could, in the past, that was pass interference. I heard none of that complaining today. So right. Like, okay, just get better. But like, hey, if there's refs out here, that's pass interference, right? There was some of that too that people don't talk about.
Of course,
I'm assuming, but that's something that you need to mention too. Is like, yeah, when a guy's playing that physical, so there's some of that he's gonna have to clean up. But I thought Clarence had a nice day. Micah Bell was we didn't see a ton of Christian Gray today. I don't just for however it worked. We just didn't see him. We saw him out there on one particular rep, but I didn't see him as much.
Yeah.
I saw a ton of Micah Bell. He got a ton of reps today.
He really did.
And here's the 2 things about Micah Bell. 3 things about Micah Bell, Vince, that I saw. I don't know if you would concur. Number 1, he is a major work in progress technically. His footwork and hand play is very, 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 very raw. Number two, very obvious, he's really fast. There was one play where Jaden Greathouse just torched him off the line, and Jaden had him probably by 4 yards, and like nothing, Mike was right there on him. Like, you got to destroy him off the ball to have any shot because his recovery speed is insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is nuts. But then he just didn't know how to play the ball when it got there. So, like, very much a work in progress. But you know what I loved?
He was on the back. I think he went on the back of one of the receivers. You know, like
yes, yeah. He is physical. He's 173 pounds. He is a physical kid and pretty strong for his size. He had a couple breakups today that I'm like, hey, they're going to keep throwing at this kid, and he's eventually going to step in front of one of those, and he's going to – and he had a couple really nice breakups today. I thought he just kept getting better and better and better because he just looked more confident as he was seeing more stuff.
Sure.
And then he was just kind of trusting his speed a little bit. So very much a work in progress, but I liked how physical he was and how competitive he was today. And I don't know if the plan was, hey, let's get Micah Bell 1 million reps, but I felt like Micah Bell got 1 million reps today.
Yeah.
And just kept competing.
Yeah.
And I liked that. I really liked that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to be a fun one to keep an eye on because of his speed, how quickly can they kind of turn that ball of clay as a defender into something that they can use on the field? You know what I mean? Like, he could be an instant impact guy in the return game right now. I mean, instant impact. That's how fast he is. But how long is it going to take to kind of mold him into a defender? I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to see for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about the slot. We talked about Clarence a little bit. Thomas Harper had a solid day. Got beat a couple times on speed routes. Chris Tyree got him once because he's just faster than he is.
Fast, yeah.
You could tell today he's still very much learning the defense. He's shaking some rust off from not having played a lot.
He didn't have a spring.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But he moves well. I liked how he moves. He just his feet would get crossed up a little bit. Not sure of maybe what the coverage was. He moves really well. He's got good instincts playing the football. He's going to be fine. Antonio Carter had a couple really nice plays. He's a downhill guy, though, which is funny because he's a converted cornerback. He's strong. He moved downhill. We didn't see a ton of him, but there was a couple plays. I'm like, who was that on the little break up there and during team? And who's that guy that can't close downhill? I was like, oh, that's number 4. That's Antonio Carter. Luke Talich is really fast and really long and really athletic, but very unsure of what he was doing. Saw a couple really flashy plays from Adon Schuler today flying downhill. One, he broke up a ball. A couple times he was a second late getting there, but, man, he shot out of a cannon coming downhill and hitting running backs as soon as they got the ball. I thought Ben Minnick was good, but Ramon Henderson was Ramon Henderson. I mean, it's what we normally see. Really athletic, but just sometimes he'll just like, what are you doing, man? You're a senior. How are you going to let a freshman, smoke you like that with his route? Xavier Watts was phenomenal.
He's just
today.
I'm telling you, it's going to be a dude.
He had 3 picks today?
Yeah. Something crazy like that.
Like, I mean, he would they would run an out cut on him and he would stay back, but he would attack downhill. So as soon as the ball left the quarterback's hand, he would just kind of turn on the juice and just undercut the route. And he would probably have 2 pick sixes today. Yeah. If they were allowed to do that. I mean, he was beating guys up in their routes. Again, sometimes a little bit too aggressive, right? So it's like, okay, that might be holding, or pass interference potentially. Not pass interference because the ball hadn't come out yet, but holding and illegal use of hands or whatever the case may be. But I loved his confidence, but he was moving today, Vince. Athletically, he just looked comfortable. He probably had 2 to 3 picks, 2-3 more beat breakups, PBUs, and the notes that I went over.
He looked incredibly comfortable. How about that? Yeah. He looked incredibly comfortable in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. He was good. I thought defensively the guys that impressed me the most today were Benjamin Morrison, Xavier Watts, Jack Kaiser, probably were the guys that stood out the most to me today. They were the dudes on defense today, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely. Those are the guys that stood out.
Xavier and Benjamin were in the battle for who was the best defensive player today, in my opinion. They were both.
And they were both playing on the same side.
Jaden Mickey had a pretty good day today as well.
Jaden Mickey,
look, he got beat that one time by Braylon James, but he just misplayed the ball. He was there. He was really good today.
But look, he made an amazing one-handed interception, and it was so funny because he makes the one-handed interception, then he purposely runs it right through the offensive guys who were standing on the sideline. I mean, that was not an accident. And then he's hyping himself up for it. And as Brian likes to say, he loved me some me. That's for sure.
Like, never shuts up.
It was, and he was going to town.
They got around the corner of the defense on a run and scored.
Yeah.
And
right.
He's running his mouth like they'd have just stoned him for a 3-yard loss or something.
Right.
It was like, what?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just who he is, dude. But I thought he was under more control technically today. He had a couple breakups. He missed that one that he got beat for. It was not Braylon James. It was not the only missed time jump he had today. He had another one earlier in practice. But that one-handed catch was tremendous. And the best part is he picks it off. He starts running back. He's like, oh my God, it was amazing. Like, he's literally praising himself.
Talking about himself.
How good of the play he just made.
Yes. Yes. And that's where the trash talking started or continued, but it got loud enough.
Because, of course, he picks off and runs to the he's acting like he's running it back, but he's running into where all the receivers are.
Correct. It's like that wasn't an accident.
No,
that was not an accident. And
that kid.
It was
oh my God.
hilarious.
That was amazing. Like, he's talking about the play he made. It was so funny.
Oh man, the chirping was hilarious.
Oh man, that kid, I love that kid's confidence. You know, I do. But he played very well in the spring.
Yeah,
he played well today. Jaden's a good football player. He just has to be more. He just has to be more technically proficient because he just doesn't have the elite length or athleticism of like a Benjamin Morrison or speed of a Micah Bell, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But he was where he needed to be today.
Right.
And that's what we saw from him in the spring. So, but there's going to be days where the receivers are going to dominate the DBs. It's just going to happen. There's going to be days where the DBs dominate the receivers. It's just going to happen. But the point is there's a lot of talent.
There's a ton of talent. And you also have to understand the ball was set on the 10-yard line going in. So not a lot of room to work. Like, they were working goal line. I mean, that was the point. I mean, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily showcase the speed of the wide receivers because they don't have a lot of room to work with. You know what I mean? So, again, once they pull it out to like the 40 and then they start, the receivers are going to have a little bit more of an advantage. And,
well, that's where the receivers got to do a better job of winning a couple more of those contested balls. Like, that's where you need to win that.
Absolutely.
You had Benjamin Morrison beat by a step. You got to finish that off, right. Tobias? I mean, you got to finish that off.
Yeah.
Sam Hartman, Tobias has Cam Hart beat. You got to drop that sucker in there. What was the route that Dion dropped at the end of that one period?
Slant.
It's like, man, you got to make that grab, right?
And he did
that grab.
His route was great. Right. Like, he stemmed the guy. He got in front of him, had him like boxed out basically on. Right. I mean, he was riding Dion's back, which is exactly where you want that guy on the goal line, and it just went right through his hands. I mean, he just dropped him. Obviously, can't do that, And for the people that are worried about quarterbacks throwing picks, like, we kind of explained this earlier when we were talking about the quarterbacks. Yeah. These guys weren't holding on to the ball or throwing the ball away.
There's nothing more annoying than a quarterback that just holds on to the ball in one-on-ones.
Like, they were throwing it. Right. Yeah, they were throwing it. So I just want to throw that
and
out
there. There's a couple of decisions like Benjamin baiting Sam, and Steve's the one that threw the pick to Benjamin. That was a bad pick because that's like, dude, I don't know who you're throwing to. Like, you just threw that up, right? That's not a good pick. Some of them are like, hey, you tried to make a play, and the defender made a better play than you did.
Right.
I thought those were positives today, Vince, from the defense. I liked what I saw from the defense today. On the back end, it's really hard to evaluate defensive players, like front seven guys.
Yeah.
Just like it's hard to evaluate offensive linemen if you're not with pads on. That's why we spent so much time today talking about the skill players, because it's just easier to evaluate them because a lot of what they do with pads on translates to
of course,
what you do without pads on. I mean, especially when you watch these kids now, their shoulder pads are so stinking skinny. I mean, Cam Hart's got his pants pulled up like 3 inches above his knee. There's no sort of knee pad protection there.
Zero.
And you're like, that kid's barely wearing pads. So you can evaluate a lot more of that from a day like today than you can an offensive lineman. That's pretty much and kind of how I feel about that one.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Vince, before we move on to the mailbag, I do want to. Oh, go ahead. Did you want
I was
to
just gonna say, are we moving to special teams?
Yes,
Because
I'm going to move to special teams, and
perfect.
I gotta say, man, the first they were doing punt cover today, right?
Correct, and they only did punt. So, like, I know some people earlier were asking about place kicking, and they're worried about the
They
kicking.
don't do all that in one day. They don't.
There was no place kicking.
The way it usually works early in camp is today's punt cover day, today's punt block day, punt protect day. I thought they were doing punt. I thought they were doing punting today, actually, because I don't know. They were so far away. But
that's
the first 4 or 5 kicks for each punter was Bryce McPherson and Ben Krim. Let's just say we were a little nervous, but it got better. But let's begin first, Vince. Let's talk about the guys that were back there returning. There wasn't a whole lot there. They were just fielding punts. They weren't making guys. I mean, they would field and then make a couple moves against no one.
Right.
And, I think there was only one ball that hit the ground that I saw, and that was a really short punt that Jay Greathouse was like, doing the whole it's there, and then it bounced, and he ran up and grabbed it. But tell people who were back there returning today, and then we'll dive into the actual punting part of it.
All right, so I wrote it down on your notebook, so I'm gonna have to do this by memory.
Okay, sorry,
no, that's
upstairs.
It's okay. So it was 19. So Greathouse.
Chris Tyree was the first guy.
Chris Tyree was back there as well.
Back there.
Those vets. Jaden Mickey was back there. He was the only defensive player that was back there. Let's see here. It was Darian Price was back there. Was Love back there? Was 12? Payne.
Jeremiah Love and then
Jeremiah Payne. Yep, there we go.
Those are the guys back there.
Yep. So it's always interesting to see who
there was not a whole lot to see. They all caught the ball fine.
Right.
There wasn't a lot to gather by that, other than just who was back there.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about the punting, Vince.
We were really worried, man. Like,
oh my God.
So we're like, oh, okay, they're gonna do. And so again, from our perspective, we were on bleachers that were on the far east side of the field. So there's 2 outdoor fields and then there's an indoor field, and we were on the far end of the second outdoor field. And they decided to do special teams on the middle field, which is next to the indoor field. So we were a football field away from the action. So I just want people understand, right? And so we could barely even see who the punter was from our vantage point, right? And so all of a sudden we see these kicks coming off, and they weren't spirals. They
weren't
were
coming off their feet real well.
I mean, we're talking some ugly, ugly kicks, and it was both guys. It was ugly, okay? And we both look at each other like, okay, that's like 4 in a row for each guy, and they've all been bad. And they're all short and no height.
So at some point in time, I think it was Vince looks over and goes, I wonder if this is just kind of they're not actually trying to kick it.
Like they're just trying to get it to the return guys. Like
or they weren't even trying to kick it hard. Like they were just kind of, just and because it was that bad. And then Vince, it changed.
Yeah. Yes.
Which made us, we felt a little.
All of a sudden, the guys started actually punting the ball, and they've got. This is not hyperbolic at all. It's twice as high, so twice as much hang time. The ball was turning over, which means it was a spiral in the air that was coming down. It was actually making the return guys move back. Like both guys, I wouldn't say one's ahead of the other based on the couple of good ones that we saw. Both guys, they put some
no bad ones mixed in. Like
correct.
It changed, which made us think like they weren't actually trying to boom it at first. It was just kind of like when quarterbacks go out there and they're just kind of, first couple one-on-ones are just kind of getting it out there and all that kind of thing. So I felt a little better. They weren't kicking it really far. Like there were no like Tyler Newsom, but they were getting good hang time.
Good turnover. It was much. We both looked like, okay, man, because that was because
we were nervous at first.
Yeah, right.
If
was
they
the punter last year, you're like, oh,
if they would not have finished the way they did, because again, there's no way it could not have been what it was, because it was just like 8 straight kicks,
right,
and then 8 straight boom kicks. So the light didn't just go on in the middle of practice. It was clear that they were not actually. There's no way they were actually trying to kick it as far as they could the first few.
Right.
They were probably just working on some things. Hey, just get it off. We're just working on this. And then after that, like because if it was just that bad, they would have mixed in a couple bad ones at the end.
Right. It was all good at the
did.
end.
Right.
They were all good at the end.
Right.
Yeah. At one point, you look at me, you're like, does John Sott have any more eligibility?
No,
Like
seriously,
we were very worried about.
Are there any soccer players that might be able to come out here and kick? But it got a lot better.
It did.
And Bryce McPherson has probably the stronger leg of the two from what I saw today.
Yeah.
But Ben Krim was, once they started kicking,
consistent. I mean, he's very consistent.
He could place it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But, that's all we really saw. We couldn't tell who was running down there.
Well, I think they only had the snapper.
The last thing I'm worried about with Notre Dame is snapping on special teams this season.
Right.
Michael Vincent's got that locked down. I mean, he's going to be really good at that. I don't even know if he was the only one snapping today. I mean, guys, it was that far away. And they weren't running down.
Only the snapper was running down. Like I saw him run down a few times. Okay. Yeah, there was a few times. See him.
But there's like there was like all those obstructions. So like it would be like the punt and then it was really weird.
Yeah.
So Ben Krim's the Penn punter, for those who aren't sure who Ben Krim is.
As in the Ivy League Penn.
Yes, Ivy League Penn. And then Bryce McPherson is a sophomore who was a scholarship kid for Notre Dame.
Right. And he was going to be like McPherson was going to be the kickoff guy last year until he got hurt.
Right.
And so then he lost that spot. He lost out on that spot. And then when he came back, they just redshirted him. Like, there's no point in having you kick off.
Right. So, and Zach Yoakum did a nice job with that.
Yeah, he did fine too. Yeah, he did absolutely fine.
Which is weird because have you ever seen him without a helmet on?
Yoakum?
Yeah. He's really small and looks like a
Oompa.
I'm not trying to joke. I mean, he looks
small. I mean,
if he walked up to you and you'd never met him in a football field, you say he said, I play football in Notre Dame. He's like, there's no way this kid plays football in Notre Dame. Or how rich is your dad? They get you in the football. Like, that's what you'd have thought. That's just what he looks like. But then you watch that kid and then you watch him kick and you're like, dude, how does that young looking kid who's like 5'8" get that much power on the football? Because when he wants to, he can kick it out of the end. I mean, he can kick it out. I mean, if Notre Dame wanted to with Zach Yoakum this year, they could almost get to the point where just nobody returns the ball ever. Like, maybe there'd be a couple, but like, he's got a really strong leg.
Yeah. They just nowadays they try to pin him into the corner and make him make a decision kind of a thing. Yeah.
But he's got a really good leg. Like, it surprised me. I was like, who the heck is this little tiny 5'8",
small, and he's kind of pudgy, like not
he
fat.
Does not look,
he's not fat. He's just
looks like a little kid. And man, he's got a really strong leg, though, man. Yeah. Really strong leg. Like, I don't know how he does it, but that kid can kick. Like him and John Sott, you'd see them walking by each other. You're like, this is what Notre Dame's banking their special teams hopes on. And then you're like, then you watch them kick. You're like, yep, I get it. Like, and they're both bigger than Blake Groupie.
Let me tell you,
at least Bryce McPherson and Ben Krim look like
athletes.
Division I athletes.
They look like athletes. Yeah.
And Spencer Schrader, they look like athletes. Yeah.
One thing I have learned, and obviously people in the chat know my kid's a kicker. One thing I have learned going to like kicking camps and stuff, like normally when you go to a camp with any other sport, you're like, okay, that guy's good. Like you could tell, like walking in, you know who's going to be athletic, you know who's going to be good. Like they're lacing up their cleats, and you're like, kickers, you don't have a freaking clue, man, until they put foot to ball. Because I have seen some of the most unathletic guys just boom the crap out of the ball, and then you see an athletic guy that can't even get it off the ground. Like it's unbelievable.
Was the exact opposite of what I thought he was going to be.
Oh yeah,
I thought Blake Groupie was going to be this kid that was just straight money from 35 in.
Yep.
But if you
just
got
super accurate,
40, you're going to have to bring in somebody else.
Correct.
And then you watch him kick, like this guy has a bazooka attached to his right hip.
Don't know where it's going to go all the time.
No clue where it's going sometimes. But he can boom it.
Like
last year's special team so weird. You're right, Vince. When Blake Groupie kicked, and it was like this at the pro day.
Yes.
When that ball comes off his foot, you're like, dude, that guy's got some power behind that kick, man.
Boom.
And then John Sott was just money. I mean, it wasn't going to go super far, but you weren't going to return it.
Right.
It was going to go exactly where you wanted to go with a lot of hang time, and he was a really good kicker. So we'll see if they can repeat. It's
amazing.
But it was fun to watch that today because we were very nervous at first. But
yes, we were. Hopefully we get to see a little place kicking tomorrow. But so now we only get this isn't giving anything away. We got the full practice today, and then tomorrow we get the 5 period, and then they're going to kick us out. So who knows what we're going to see tomorrow in 5 periods.
They're going to politely ask us to leave.
Correct. Some more politely than others.
True.
So, but we'll see how that goes tomorrow.
Yep. So, Vince, let's wrap this part up and we'll head over to the mailbag.
Absolutely. So stick around. We're going to have a mailbag. So get your questions in. Make sure you hit MB in front of your question. And Brian will start trolling for those. But make sure
you
never
troll. I never troll.
Sorry, bad choice of words. But make sure you make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell. And make sure you share with your family and friends. You know what? Why don't you give us a 5-star review too? That'd be great. Why don't you do that?
And sign up for the message boards.
Absolutely sign up for the message boards, because then you get everything. Okay, you get the intel, you get the practice reports, you get the whole deal, and you get some great conversation and be a part of the IB family. And we'd love to have you. So make sure you get in there. But so that's going to wrap up this portion of the show. But stick around, because I'm Vince, that's Brian, and we'll be right back. All right, Brian, let's get into the mailbag, my friend. We got a super chat from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. Thank you very much. This team is dangerous, and I'm excited for this year. Pretty much says it all. I mean, that's how I feel. Again,
if you're not excited about what a team looks like on day one, it's going to be a long year. I mean, let's be real about that, right? Like, there's a lot this team has to prove. Each day is its own day. I liked where they're at with day one. Now, if they look like this on day 9, there's a problem.
Sure.
But day one is certainly a lot to be excited about. Certainly.
Absolutely. Mark 1 with the super chat. Thank you so much. Congratulations on over 700 in the chat. Well, there's over 850 now. So look forward to what this team can accomplish this year. Looks good. Look out good.
Yep.
It is good.
Got a couple super stickers from Patrick Frass. You got one for 10, one for 5. We appreciate you very, very much. And then we got a big one from Eric Tomel.
Ooh, Eric, thank you so much for that super chat, man. That is awesome. I'm a longtime listener. I usually watch you guys on replay. Here's to a great season. Thanks, Eric.
I really am excited for this season. I really am, Vince. I am. It's, how good is this team going to be? I don't know.
We don't know.
Will they be 12-0, 10-2, 9-3? I don't know. I just love the talent of this team. I think there's pieces in place for this team to be pretty good. I really do. There's a really nice blend of a lot of experience. Like, there's over 300 career starts coming back in Notre Dame this year. I counted this up. There's 180 something on defense. There's like 140 something on offense. Even if you take out Sam Hartman's 45, there's still over 100 on offense. And so, but there's also some really talented younger kids. There's some guys coming back from injury like Jadarian Price. And the other good thing is knock on wood, not that matters at all. It doesn't. But the only guy that was on the sidelines today was Caleb Smith, who from the freshman receiver, KK Smith is what he goes by. He was the only guy out today. He had shoulder surgery in the offseason from an injury he sustained in high school. But Coach Freeman talked about that today in the press conference, that he's going to be out at least a couple months. But other than that, then they were pretty healthy. I don't remember a time when they had this few guys, and I don't remember anybody going out during the practice. Like, I mean, they look like they're in pretty good shape. There's nobody really, and it was pretty humid today, I thought. It got better, but it was pretty humid today. I don't remember anybody up chucking, and we usually see that on first day of practice. We see somebody over by the bins kind of heaving up their breakfast or whatever.
Remember last year,
I didn't see last year. So
right, but they had guys that were tapping out, like they from heat, and they were like, "No, you're good. You get out of here." That kind of a thing. That didn't happen today. Now they shortened it, I think, on purpose because they kind of learned their lesson. But I didn't see any of that this year.
Well, and Coach Freeman talked about that. He said he felt last year there was so much emotion and energy,
right?
They burned out really quick, and then that you kind of wear you down. So he purposely kept the first day a little shorter. Plus, they had a really hard summer workout program.
Sure.
And Coach Freeman talked about like the Matt Bayless stuff. And he mentioned like, look, Coach Bayless got us through, was there through the whole summer. That's a big part. And what they're going to be doing in the fall is like that plan's already been created by Coach Freeman and Coach Bayless. Like it's up to Fred Hale and the rest of the strength staff to carry it out. But that plan was already created.
Exactly.
By Coach Freeman and Coach Bayless. And so that's a good part too. But that leads to kind of part of the excitement is it's not like it was a shorter practice. It wasn't like a super, super, super up-tempo practice, but it wasn't a laid-back practice either. They were working.
Oh, sure.
It was sunny until the very end, and pretty human. I mean, you and I were talking on the phone on the way there as we're game planning. Man, I just like opened my garage and like punched me right in the face. How humid it was. It was just it was really thick. But they were clearly in good shape. But when they were there, they were working. And like you said, I didn't see anybody tapping out. Now they also did a good job of getting a lot of dudes reps today as well.
Absolutely,
which is smart.
A lot of reps for everybody.
You start getting fatigued on day 1 and 2 and 3. You're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely.
You're
like somebody in the chat said something like, did the freshman safeties get get any reps? I was like, everybody got reps.
We talked about them a little bit.
I know. I just like in general, it made me think of the fact that like nobody was on the sideline. Like everybody got reps. Right. There was walk-ons that were getting reps. Like
there's a couple walk-ons that were just calling in plays the whole time.
Sure, but that was their job. Like they were that was their reps as they were calling stuff in. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, there was good work done today. Yeah. Definitely good work done today. But Eric, again, thank you for that super chat, man. I appreciate that very, very much.
From Jacob Mears, who surprised you enough today that if they perform as well throughout camp as they did today, will secure a starting role? So does that mean like guys that we didn't think were going to start already?
Yeah, I would be very hesitant to say that about something on day 1.
Yeah.
Like, I'll just use an example. Let's say I were like, hey, I really liked what I saw from Rocco Spindler today. He may beat up is an offensive line with no pads on, right? Like, I love what I saw from Rocco, but I'm not like, let's pump the brakes on how he looked is going to beat out so-and-so. There's no pads on. What I would say is Jacob, that the takeaway that I would look for is nobody disappointed me today athletically or conditioning wise or effort wise.
Right.
That's a big takeaway. And some guys were more athletic, more explosive.
Right.
So, the best I could do with your question would be the way that Jadarian Price and Jabron Payne moved around today. You feel really good about the running back depth.
Sure.
As much as we can know without running backs having pads on. And that's the big keys with no pads on. It's too hard to get into that kind of discussion, Jacob, of this guy may secure a starting role.
Can I say
we
it this
praised
way?
Rocco, but we also thought Andrew Kristofic had a good day. It's just Rocco was the bigger kind of question mark coming.
It's the bigger revelation, I guess, is from last year to this year. Like, but nobody eliminated themselves. How about that? Like nobody came out and was like, and you and I were like, oh, like that's
a guy that we thought was going to play is like, this guy's light years away.
Right. Like, exactly. So
Rico Flores had a great spring, but man, he looked rough today. Like, he didn't have a good day, but he still looks like a talented kid that just needs to continue to work. So and nobody so far, at least today, got hurt.
Brandon asks, I like hearing Coach Marcus Freeman talk about the younger linebackers getting reps with the ones, but why is Maris being locked into the starting will spot instead of having an open competition?
I mean, he never said there's not an open competition.
Right.
The whole point of getting those guys reps with the one is to see what they can do. I'm not going to have an open competition the way that you're defining it with guys who've never played.
Sure.
What I'm going to do, however, is get those guys opportunities to get those reps with the one, see how they perform, and if they do, then this kid's going to push.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're looking for is Coach Freeman to come in and say, Marist is got a battle to keep his job. Well, he's not going to say that.
Right.
We don't need him to say that. What we need to see happen is exactly what he said. I better see Jalen Sneed and Nolan Ziegler and Drake Bowen and Jaden Osberg in opportunities to get those reps to see how they perform. And if they perform well, then you give them more. If they keep performing well, then you give them more. So to say that Maris is locked into the starting will spot, I don't think that's fair to say on the first day. You're always going to put your veterans and your returning starters on the field on the first day unless they already got beat out in the spring.
Sure.
And that didn't happen. So I don't know that that's a fair takeaway from practice one or a fair takeaway from what Coach Freeman said in the post-practice press conference. I actually think what he's saying is exactly that, because you don't promise guys playing time. You promise them an opportunity. That's all. You're going to start. You're going to do this. I'm going to give you an opportunity, and what you do with it is up to you. That's what you tell kids. So if I'm going to give you reps with the ones, I'm giving you your opportunity to go show me that you can play at this level. That if that's not an open competition, I don't know what is. I mean, we'd have to say that we think that if in those instances where they give them reps with the ones, if they go perform at a high level, that it won't matter. They're just going to keep playing Maris. I don't think that. What evidence do we have of that right now with this coaching staff? We don't know. Really, actually, we don't really know one way or the other. So I'm going to take Coach Freeman at his word with what he told me this summer and then what he said in the press conference, which is, and you're not getting these guys 1 reps just in case they may have to play someday.
Right.
You're giving them 1 reps to see what they can do. And if they prove themselves capable, then you give them more. You give them more. It's the very definition of an open competition, in my opinion.
Yeah, nothing's set in stone on day 1. I will say that.
Yeah.
For the most part. Sam Hartman's going to start at quarterback.
Yeah. But that was already going to happen.
No, I'm just kidding.
It was already going to happen.
I'm joking. But yes. Yeah. Oh, it came up. I don't know why I was looking for more questions. It's sitting right in front of me. Who gets the first ever IB practice warrior of the day award? I didn't realize we were giving out awards.
Yeah, warrior of the day. I'd probably go Benjamin Morrison.
I'll go Xavier Watts. We'll each give one. How's that?
Okay, it's fair.
I don't know.
It's fair. Yeah, I like that. I can dig that.
Irish Gordian Knot. It was cool hearing you ask a question at the press conference. How do you go about selecting the question that you ask?
Well, a lot of times it's just the question that I'm most curious about, kind of going into a practice.
Right.
With everything that happened yesterday and some of the things that we had heard, I wanted to really find out from Coach. And then I looked at the roster last night and just saw the long list of guys that are 4+ pound weight gains and said, man, I'm curious if there's some things they're doing differently. And then I was very curious to kind of, because I don't know the answer to this, because I don't know. It's always like sometimes you'll ask a question you already know the answer to because you want to get the coach's quote to say the quote. So I know this, but I need to hear him say it. Well, to me, I was genuinely curious because I've never been a head coach. It's like I talked about this on the message board post I did about Coach Bayless last night. If I'm an offensive line coach and they hire a new OC and we were running inside zone, outside zone counter before. This guy wants to keep me as the O-line coach, but he wants to run pin and pull and air raid stuff and all that. I know offensive line play, but I don't know that stuff. So what I'm going to do is this offseason, after he gets hired, I'm going to go spend some time with Bill Bedenbaugh at Oklahoma, who's an air raid guy that teaches that kind of stuff. I'm going to go down to Tennessee maybe, or actually he's their O-line coach, I think is now. And down south, I may go down to spend some time with Alex Atkins and do that kind of thing. If I'm an O-line coach and we were a pin and pull team and we're moving to more of a traditional offense, I'm going to see if Harry Heastan can sit down and have some time with me. I'm going to go hang out with Sharon Moore and talk about the techniques that they use to teach their concepts and how that implements into what we do. And I know how to learn that stuff, right? When I became a running backs coach for the first time, receivers coach for the first time, that's what I would do is I would, talk to and with people that know how to do it and see what worked for us and what we're trying to do. Well, I don't know if it's the same way in strength program or if there's other ways they do it. And turns out they don't do it that same way in strength program, right? He has someone who's tasked with going out and finding that, and then he brings that stuff to Coach Freeman, and Coach Freeman makes decisions about what they're going to do. And Coach Bayless was part of that process. He's not anymore because he's now retired, or resigned. So I think those things are all part of it, and I was very curious how that works, and to hear what the changes that they've really implemented are, because you're always evolving, right? I mean, you're always adding little wrinkles here, little things there. What's our strength? What are some things our team had issues with last year? Are we doing enough to implement speed plus power? Or there's all types of things. You're always looking to get better, and that's kind of what they're looking to do with that. Yep. So that's why I asked that question today. And I knew what the other questions were going to be: backup quarterbacks, running backs, corners. I mean, we knew this was going to get asked, and it's good that stuff's got asked. So you have to be prepared to. What are you curious about? And that's what I was curious about today.
Yep. Stevie Wonder. Tyson Ford dropped quite a bit. Big End his calling for this year?
That's what he played today. Now, again, I don't know if that's what he's going to play forever, but it sounds like – because what was one of the things we talked about when we did our D-line preview is I don't know who the next D-end is after the 2 veterans, after Nana and Javante Jean-Baptiste. Right now it's just a freshman. We said somebody's going to have to play there. Well, now we have our answer. It's
Tyson Ford.
It's Tyson Ford, and I think Aiden Gobier is going to get some work there too. Those two guys are going to compete for that. Aiden's up 15 pounds. Tyson's down 18 pounds. So I think Tyson kind of gave Aiden some of his weight, which he needed. He's up to 256 now. And so they're going to compete there for depth at that position. So that's now, could he again continue? Because you and I both felt he put on a little bit of not great weight to get up to 292. So you wanted to get some of that off and then build it back up in muscle.
Stunted his growth just a little bit.
Yeah.
Learning the position and all that kind of stuff.
So.
Yeah.
I think so.
His explosiveness. Andre Tonsol. Marcus Freeman is building a team to look somewhat like Georgia and Alabama, which I like.
To a degree, I think there's some truth to that. We're going to be physical in the trenches and fast on the perimeter. I think so. Right. Schemes are going to be different, but philosophy, I'd say that's somewhat accurate. I would say that's also kind of what worked for Clemson when they were really good. It's what worked for Ohio State when they were really good. I mean, that's the recipe, right? Be really athletic on the perimeter and be able to be butt kickers in the trenches. I think that's partly why Michigan, we talked about this yesterday, it's why Michigan has beaten Ohio State the last 2 years. Ohio State's got the better perimeter talent. Michigan's way better in the trenches, and that's why they've been able to dominate.
Sure.
This is still a physical. I know the rule changes are constantly moving in change of that, and I think in the NFL it's gone even further than that. But in college football, you still got to be able to be great in the trenches if you're going to be a championship team.
Sure.
TCU would have been a much more competitive against Georgia last year in a 7-on-7 tournament than in an 11-on-11 game. Just would have.
Yep.
Right. You still got to play big boy football. And Coach Freeman understands that, and he's building towards that. And that, to me, Andre, is what you're hitting on there. And what's important is that's if you want to compete with those teams, like the problem with Georgia and Alabama relative to Notre Dame is they're really good at what Notre Dame is trying to define themselves at, which is line play. Well, that's what Georgia's doing. So if you want to be better than them, then you've got to even be better than them there, but you've got to get better than them some other places, which means it can't be a wash in the trenches and then they beat you on the perimeter, because that's exactly what happened in the playoff game in the Rose Bowl in 2020. If you go break that film down, Notre Dame's offensive line and defensive line more than held their own against Alabama that day. Where Notre Dame got worked is when the ball got on the perimeter.
Skill, yeah.
Bama was way better.
Yeah. And they
couldn't tackle. They just all that stuff
so well to get certain guys the ball and all the things that we're talking about, what we think Notre Dame is going to be. That's what Alabama was doing, man. I mean they schemed to get their guys
Smith catch like 3 balls behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. That ended up being big. One of them went for a touchdown.
They moved him all over the place just to make sure that he was getting matchups that were good, and they found a matchup that they really liked in that game, if anybody remembers, and it wasn't.
Remember after the pass that Kyle Hamilton almost picked off early in the game, they never threw another deep ball the entire game. They didn't need to. Just throw a little now screen, and their corners can't tackle Devontae Smith or John Mechie or Najee Harris. Exactly. So why would we take a chance throwing the ball down the field?
Right. Yep.
So
exactly.
Good stuff today. Good
Tyler Evans with the super chat. Thanks, Tyler. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the excellent coverage, guys. And what did you think of the Mike Elko contract extension from Duke? Is it too early or perfect for Duke?
Oh, it's perfect for Duke because, number one, it's not a monster contract. You always get into a little bit of trouble when you give a guy a contract too early. We've seen this Charlie Weiss, Mel Tucker. Sure. But I think with Mike Elko, there's a little bit more of a track record there. I don't believe that the contract – I'm actually going to look it up and see what the actual numbers were.
Your details here.
Yeah, because I want to they signed him through 2029.
Okay.
I don't see. I don't know what the specifics were of it. Most likely, what this turn. Let me just see if I can find some numbers because I don't want to speak out of turn about this. But this is a little bit of a different situation than maybe. So it came down to you had an extension. You get a bigger salary pool for assistants. It's a lot of that stuff was part of the negotiation. It doesn't say what his numbers were. If I had to guess, knowing how contract extensions like this are, there's a couple really important ingredients to this. Number one, which has been reported, it's a good head coach is a guy that doesn't just fight for himself to get pay raises. It's for his staff to get pay raises. Absolutely. And I'll give Brian Kelly credit. Every time Brian Kelly, almost every time, not every time, I'll say a lot of the time, that Brian Kelly was fighting with Notre Dame about salary early in his tenure to the middle. A lot of it was also about, I need more for my guys. Late in his career, it was more about him. But early on, it was about, okay, I need more of a pool, that kind of thing. And so there's that. And then the other part of it, yeah, there's probably a jump. The problem with Mel Tucker's contract wasn't that they signed him to an extension. And the same with Charlie Weiss. The issue with those two contracts, they gave him a ton more money.
Mm-hmm.
With Elko, I'd be willing to bet you it's not a ton more money. It's more Duke friendly from a buyout standpoint if somebody comes calling.
Sure.
So if you leave for Notre Dame in 4 years after Marcus Freeman wins 3 straight titles and retires, right? Just being silly, right? Then it's going to cost Notre Dame a lot more, which helps protect us.
Sure, exactly.
It also is going to limit some of the schools you can leave us for.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to leave. Some schools are just not going to pay that kind of buyout. Big time school will, and then you get paid for it. So those are probably two of the more important aspects of the contract extension, as opposed to Mike Elko now making $10 million. I doubt it was like that kind of huge jump. And so I could be wrong, but I have a feeling it was a lot more about that. And in that regard, it's smart, because if Mike Elko is able to have success and you're paying your coaches well, and his coaches are constantly leaving for bigger and better jobs, and all of a sudden young, talented coaches want to work for him. Hey, Elko's a good head coaching, like he's a good coach's coach.
Right.
You know, he's going to take care of you if you work your butt here. He'll understand you want to go be a coordinator somewhere, you want to do this somewhere. Hey, I'm going to work with you on that. But when you're here, I need you to work your butt off. I'm going to make sure you're taken care of. All of a sudden, if I'm a 31-year-old assistant coach and I think highly of myself and I think I have talent and I'm coming up in this business, that's a dude I want to go work for.
Mm-hmm.
With his connections and the fact that he fights for his staff and all that kind of stuff. And that's where you got to be at that. Look, it's hard for a place like Duke to just keep assistants for 15 years. I mean, it just is, because they got success and all of a sudden Georgia's throwing money at him. The Duke's like, we can't afford to pay an offensive coordinator $3 million. Like our head coach doesn't even make much more than that. Right. But it's okay, because your guy just left for Georgia, which means I can sell that to the next young offensive coordinator that's going to run the system that I want to run. It's not ideal, but it's either that or get guys that are just solid coaches that nobody wants.
Yeah.
And then you can keep them forever.
Yep.
I don't know if that's necessarily where you want to be. Like the getting the Phil Parkers to stay at Iowa for a long time, that's so rare nowadays.
Right.
Especially with the younger generation. I mean, we're taught to come up in this business, Vince, that you take any job that's a promotion for you, you just do it. And that's what I was taught. And that's kind of how I was. That's why my first 5 years as a coach, I coached at 4 different schools. This is what you're taught. It wasn't like that for a long time.
Right.
And the older generation, I think, understands a little bit more. Like, you find a place that you're comfortable,
stick it out.
Value is staying there. And so you see like guys like Phil Parker staying for a long time at Iowa and guys like that. There's just not a lot of those guys anymore, Vince. Be honest with you. And the money is getting so big for coordinators in some of these schools.
Yeah.
It's like, man, like I can.
You're talking million. I mean,
you're making 600,000 at one school, and you jump up to 2. Like, I'm curious what Jim Knowles' contract was at Oklahoma State. I'm going to see if I can look this up, but I'd be willing to bet that it wasn't great. Yeah, he's getting paid $2 million a year at Ohio State. I'm very curious to see what he was making at Oklahoma State, and I cannot find it. But that's a big jump. Like, Oklahoma State offered him like 1.3 to keep him at Oklahoma State. If that was their money to keep him there, then he wasn't obviously. He was making $800,000 per season. That's what he was making.
They offered him a $500,000 upgrade.
So he went from, and it wasn't even close to what Ohio State offered.
Yeah.
Ohio State offered him 1.9. That's a huge. Yeah. That's not. I was making if you're making 1.5 and you leave for 1.8, you're just kind of being greedy. It's not really. But like, if you're making 800,000 and they offer you 2, that's a big jump.
It's doubling your salary,
especially if you're not going to a state that's like it's be different. It's like you took the USC job. Like that $1.2 million difference from living in Oklahoma ain't really going to be 1.2 million, because you're going to a state that's just going to tax you at a much, much higher rate. Doesn't matter as much. But if you're going to Florida, Ohio's a pretty good stack state. It's good from what I remember. It's like the cost of living there is way better. Sure. A really nice house in Columbus is going to be expensive, but it's not going to be as expensive as a medium-sized house in LA or New York or Miami kind of thing, right? So there's those things to factor in too, Vince. But going from Oklahoma to Ohio, that's a big pay jump. So that's going to happen. You're going to lose those guys. It is what it is. You've got to make sure that your place is attractive enough to where I can then replace you with somebody that's also very good. And that's just unfortunately the way that it's going to be. And Elko understands that because that's exactly what he did in his career. I mean, he came to Notre Dame for a year, used that job to go get himself a nice big pay raise.
He got a big pay raise going to A&M.
Right? And I have no ill will towards him for that. You do what you got to do. He was at Bowling Green for 4 years. He was at Hofstra for 3 years. He was at Bowling Green for 4. He was at Wake Forest for 3, Notre Dame for 1, A&M for 4, and then he's now the head coach at Duke. So it's not like there was anywhere he ever – like there's only one school he was at the Power 5 level that he saw his first recruiting class through. Now, it's okay. It's part of the business, right? I mean, I understand all that. But you just got to make it to where your situation is attractive enough to where when you are cycling through coaches that you've got the money to make it attractive. And then the guys that really like it there may stay there a little bit longer, a couple years longer than otherwise they would.
Well, like a Mike Elston.
Like, hey, coach, I want to stay with you, man. But
not Elston, excuse me. Like Mike Elston. He stuck around for a long time at Notre Dame because he liked it here.
And kids, and I mean, there were things that he prioritized more than money.
And when I say he liked it, I meant like the whole, I mean, family was involved. I mean, it was no doubt about that. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of coaches don't make that decisions for the same reasons Mike Elston did. Correct. Let's be honest, most don't.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that. Frank Sierra, are you guys concerned about the wide receiver depth with the loss of KK Smith?
Not yet. I mean, I don't know how much he was going to play this year. I mean, they're still at 8 right now, healthy guys. They also have 5 tight ends and 5 running backs, which also factors in, Frank, right? So, like you say, if you're going to be a 10 personnel team all year, then I'm a little nervous about it, number one. Number two, to be honest with you, Notre Dame's got a couple pretty good walk-ons. And depth isn't just about, like, 8 guys is plenty to have a depth chart going into a game. Where it can get problematic, Vince, is, okay, but I don't have anybody to run the scout team now. I had to pull up all the scholarship guys. Well, like Jordan Faison, number 80, that's not your typical walk-on, Vince.
Yeah.
Like when you think walk-on in Notre Dame,
we talked about him a lot.
We have an opinion of what that looks like, right?
Sure.
You look at Jordan Faison, you're like, well, this kid was recruited to play lacrosse at Notre Dame, correct?
Yes. And he's on a bit of a lacrosse scholarship too. I don't know how much.
I don't know about that. I don't have it. Is he? I don't know.
I do know. Okay. I just don't know if it's a full one.
Lacrosse team just did what again? Won a national championship. I was being sarcastic there.
Okay. I was going to say.
The point being, this Notre Dame's an elite lacrosse program.
Correct.
You're coming to Notre Dame to be on the lacrosse team. You're a pretty athletic kid. He was also a really good high school football player.
Right.
Maybe not quite Notre Dame level, but when you watch him around today, like that kid belongs at Notre Dame.
It's funny you say that.
Belongs at Notre Dame. Henry Garrity belongs at Notre Dame.
So I was talking to an assistant lacrosse coach the other day, and while doing my other job, and he's like, he was talking about Faison. He's like, yeah, we got a kid who's walking onto the football team, and he was genuinely terrified that he was going to get playing time on the football team. And then he would get a football scholarship because right now it's lacrosse 1, football 2. And then, but if he gets a full ride football scholarship, whoop, like the tables are turned. So that's how much they want him on the lacrosse team.
How good of a football player he was.
And that's how high school too. Exactly. And so he's genuinely worried he's going to get a scholarship at the football program. So I thought that was interesting. That tells you right there what an athlete this kid is.
Yeah. And so, you've got him, to me, I mean, if he's your quote unquote 9, you're good.
Yeah.
I mean, Leo Scheidler's a pretty athletic kid. I remember watching his film in high school. Like, that's a pretty good football player.
Right.
Like, that's a kid that if I'm a Valpo, I'm dying to get that kid to my school.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right. So if Leo Scheidler's running a scout team for me, he's going to give me a look. Jordan Faison's going to give me a look. If I ever get a situation, I got to play one of those guys like I did Matt Salerno. I think he'll be okay. He can help us with some things.
Right.
And so that's why it's really smart to recruit really good football players as walk-ons.
Yes.
And they've done that. I mean, especially the last couple of years, but this freshman walk-on class is really good.
You talked about that. Like, this is the best walk-on class that you've seen in a
like
long time.
legit football players, like
Right.
legit football players in this
Right.
walk. I mean, like guys that like Luke Talich has no business being on uh, a walk on for more than a year or two, like
Right.
at the most. I mean, that kid's a scholarship football player.
Right.
Jordan Faison's a really good footballer. Will he ever be a scholarship guy? I don't know. I hope not, because I kind of want him to be part of the lacrosse program and do
Right.
both.
I know, right?
But if that kid if you're ever
right,
quote unquote forced to play him in a situation, that kid's athletic, man.
Yeah,
that kid can do some things. He can really do some things. So I like what he brings to the table. So to your point, Frank, I'm not concerned yet. Now you give me another injury to a veteran, and that's going to be long term. And yeah, I'm like, if another receiver goes down and he's going to be out 2-3 weeks, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If a second receiver goes out and he's going to be out a couple weeks, I'm okay. I'm good. If you're getting to some of the what hurt Notre Dame last year, Vince, was the injuries they had they were already thin. They had like 6 or 7 scholarship receivers last year,
and then it was
then
the whole
Avery
year.
Davis goes down and he's out for the whole year.
Right.
Joe Wilkins basically was never 100% the whole year.
Right.
And then everybody else you had was freshman or sophomore.
Those are your 2 veterans. Like those are the worst guys that you could have lost. You know,
this team's a little different situation. You have a little bit more of a buffer because of your 4-man freshman class, which is also, and you had 1 freshman last year.
Right.
This is a very advanced freshman class, especially with Rico and Jaden. Like they know how to play football.
Right.
So I'm not worried about it yet. They're a couple injuries away where it starts getting problematic.
Yeah, I didn't.
More concerned.
I mean, when I initially saw this question, I didn't see KK Smith as being somebody that they're going to be counting on this year. That doesn't mean he's not important. I mean, you know, he could have worked his way up or whatever. So yeah, it doesn't hurt them yet.
But it's not just about playing; it's also about
absolutely.
That's a really good football player that even if he wasn't going to play this year, he's down there giving your first team defense a look.
Absolutely, and he's learning the position.
Exactly, he's getting reps.
Right. It's the depth for 24 because I'm not saying he's out for the whole season, but he's going to miss a lot of practice over the next few months.
Coach Freeman said a couple months, so hopefully he's back in October.
Right,
that's going to be
which means he can salvage half of his season, which would be fantastic.
Right. Even if he just comes back for like November in the bowl games, I mean, you're going to get some work in.
Sure,
and that'll help you get ready for the offseason.
I almost said YouTube user from Salty. Jagasaw at 330 pounds, 30 more pounds of weight. What kind of monster is he now?
Yeah. So again, this is why, like, Notre Dame put him at 300 pounds because that's what he was when he came on a visit, like as a junior. Ryan talked about this after the Army game, and Charles was up to 320 pounds.
Yeah.
So he's only really added like 10 pounds since the Army game, the Army All-American game. He hasn't added that much more weight. 30 pounds from like junior year of high school, sure, maybe.
So it's a little deceiving.
A little bit, yeah. Like they had Sullivan Absher had like a 26-pound weight gain from where they listed him in the spring. Sullivan Absher did not gain 26 pounds since January. He just is now more accurately. He's gained weight, but he's now more accurately. His weight is more accurate to what it truly was. So that's more of what's going on there.
That makes sense.
Than necessarily he had a 30-pound weight gain. He hasn't been 300 pounds for a while. So I don't care what he was listed as. I promise you he's not been 300 pounds for a while.
Well, I can tell you right now he looks like a good 330. And it's a good looking 330 is what I'm saying.
Right.
Don't worry.
And with any freshman, there's reshaping that needs to happen. But he's in a good position.
From our boy Brandon Plensler. If Colsey doesn't step up and sees a starting role at wide receiver this year, I would not be upset at all if Tobias, Tyree, and Jaden Thomas were the starting 3 wide receivers. I love that lineup right there.
Well, I mean, whether he starts or not, I really don't care. It's about you need him, you need Jaden, you need Tyree, you need Tobias, you need Salerno, and you need at least one freshman to be part of a rotation. It's not just where 3 guys start and they play the whole game. You need more guys to play. So even if Deion's not starting, you need Deion to be a factor for you. So look at last year. He wasn't starting, and he made some clutch plays for Notre Dame last year.
Yeah, he did. Big third down plays.
So, you may love that. I'm not upset about that lineup, but it's not about being upset about it. It's about you need more than 3 guys to get through a whole season.
Absolutely.
So you still need Deion to continue to grow and develop and push as a player. And that's where he needs
to. The wide receiver is weird because it's not going to be the same guys starting every game. It's based on the package that's out there, and
sometimes it's 12. Yeah,
I mean, there's a million things that different. But But I see where your head's at, Brandon, and I like that 3 as a package too. There's no doubt about it, but they're going to need more than that. You're absolutely right.
Right. And that's where sometimes I think we can miss the conversation about depth. It's like when we respond to Frank's question, right? It's like, well, are you worried about the depth? Well, it depends on what you are concerned about. Are you concerned about, am I worried about the depth for Navy? No, I'm not worried. If you, am I an injury away from now all of a sudden, if I have a 5-man rotation receiver, and that means I only have 2 scholarship players run the scout team, not worried about that for Navy.
Right.
Not really worried about for Tennessee State. Getting ready for NC State, that's a problem. Getting ready for Ohio State, that's a problem.
Right.
So there's lots of different ways where depth can impact you. And again, that's why a good walk-on program is important.
Absolutely.
And I remember what the walk-on program looked like when Brian Kelly got hired. And that was something that he and Mike Elson really made, because he was a recruiting coordinator at the time, put a lot of emphasis on, is we got to upgrade our quality of our walk-ons. Because I remember having lunch with Elson one day, and he's like, what makes it a challenge to build a roster at Notre Dame compared to Cincinnati? He was just making a point. At Cincinnati, we could go get all these really good in-state high school players.
Mm-hmm.
And we get some of them to turn down MAC schools, some turn down 1AA schools to come to Cincinnati. And since it's an in-state kid in an in-state school, he's not paying that much money.
You can throw all kinds of money at him.
Right.
Absolutely.
At Notre Dame, it's like these kids got to pay $60,000. At the time, it was $60,000, a little bit more. That's harder to do. I can't just get some Indiana kid, some in-state kid, and say, hey, you only got to pay $10,000. And he's like, our special team's like loaded with walk-on kids, but they're called walk-ons. But like these are Division I-ish caliber players, whether they're MAC kids or Youngstown state level kids or really good D2 type players. So your roster is like 120 deep of pretty good football players. And Notre Dame was like scholarship kids and then like walk-ons who just weren't that good. And you had the occasional good walk-on, but there weren't many. Brian Kelly really raised the level of Notre Dame's walk-on program. And I mean, walk-on used to be sort of a pejorative, like this guy's a walk-on. Like now it's like when you think of a Notre Dame walk-on, you start listing off the guys that were walk-ons that became really good football players. Chris Fink was a walk-on in Notre Dame.
Yep.
Take that kid off the 2018 football team and they're not as good. I mean, we could go down this list of a lot of guys that were walk-on. Michael Vinson, one of the best long snappers in college football. Very important part to the Notre Dame roster. Walk-on. John Sott last year, walk-on. Zach Yoakum, we talked about earlier, really good kickoff guy, walk-on. Right? What was hard for Notre Dame is they couldn't get good walk-ons to kick because it's so expensive to get here. It took you had to really work at it, and they just didn't invest the time in it. Brian Kelly started to change that, and this staff has really changed that to where has built on that, where let's go find some really good football players that because they used to give scholarships to, like, every year they'd give a scholarship to a long snapper. Like every third year they'd give a scholarship to a long snapper. They had this thing where you'd come in, Scott Daly, John Shannon, and you'd kind of sit out for a year and then you'd take over for 4 years for the guy that left.
Right.
Well, then Michael Vinson comes along and you're like, well, this guy's as every bit as good than anybody we could give a scholarship to, and he's cool to be a walk-on. Now they eventually gave him a scholarship, which is awesome. 6-year guy and all that, but you've got to have a strong walk-on program to me to have the kind of depth on your team that you need to be effective, because it's not always just about what my 2 deep is for Saturday. It's about what kind of look am I giving my starting offense and starting defense, right? And you look at some of the kids that Notre Dame has as walk-ons on like the D line, that number, I can't remember his name, is number 45. Like that kid looks like a scholarship athlete. Like he doesn't look like your stereotypical walk-on. He's like 6'4.5", 285, moves pretty well. Like this kid's
Kobe Oniyuki.
Yes. And you're like, this kid's a good football player.
Yeah. 6'4", 285.
Yeah. And so all those things factor. And so like when you look at receiver, back to Brandon's question, it's one thing to say, hey, I got my starting lineup figured out. All right, cool. But they can't play every snap, nor should they play every snap. And you're going to need other guys to step up and play. And if you only have 3 guys and you start kind of getting pigeonholed of, okay, we know where Jaden Thomas is going to line up every snap. I like Jaden Thomas a lot. I don't know if Jaden's kind of kid that you look at and say, we're going to just leave him at one position all the time. I don't know if you're doing it right by him. If you're only playing him in one spot, are you really putting him in the best position to maximize his potential? I don't think you are, because of how good he looked in the slot last year. Like, you need to give him more opportunities to do that in certain situations. And so you need all those guys to play.
No doubt. Nathan Milton, could you see JP and JL, Jadarian Price and Julian Love, being running back 1 and 2? If so, does that impact the locker room? Like as in next year? Or is he talking about
RB1
this
and
year?
2. Look, those guys are not going to be RB1 and 2 this year, barring injury.
Right.
Like those guys are not beating out Audric Estime unless Audric Estime just decides he doesn't want to work hard anymore. Like Audric Estime, what we were referring to is speed-wise, it's not close. He can't run with those other guys. But I've also said a million times, speed is not as important to a running back as people think it is. Dexter, you know who else is slower than all those other guys? Like Dexter Williams would be slower in a 40-yard split race. Dexter Williams ran a 4.58.
Yeah.
And that's it. But he was a really good football player. So to me, I think some people are kind of taking that as like, oh, these guys are better than Audric. No. They're faster than Audric.
Right.
That's where they are. He's still their best running back by a lot, in my opinion. So if Audric goes down, heaven forbid, would I be okay with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love being 1 and 2? Sure, if they're the best two. But don't sleep on Jabron Payne, because here's what we're going to do. We fall in love with speed, right? Oh, got to get this. Okay, but this is a position where speed is nice if you have it, but I've seen some great backs not be fast. We just saw one at Notre Dame recently. Kyron Williams is a 4.6 kid. That's it. He would be the slowest running back on this roster most likely. But he's a pretty darn good football player, right? Now, I think he'd have a tough time starting on this team. I don't think he would start on this team. Let's think about that for a second. I don't think Kyron Williams, if he's around now, starting over the kids that they have on the roster now.
Yeah.
But he's a good football player. Tony Jones is a 4.7. He's a pretty good football player that averaged way more yards per carry than Kyron Williams ever did. So you got to look at it and from that way too. Jabron Payne's going to be in that conversation. Devin Ford will be in that conversation. But the only way that it would only time depth chart creates a locker room problem, Vince, is when the players don't feel it's earned.
Right.
That's it.
Yep. Agreed.
And if Jadarian Price and Jeremiah, let's just say hypothetically that Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love just go out there and just dominate the position every day, and they're just clearly better than Audric. Audric could probably be upset, but the rest of the locker room would be like, hey, we love you, man. We need you to stay in there because we need you to help, but these guys are just better than you, right? Most locker room would be, because at the end of the day, they want to win. The reality is that's not going to happen because they're not better than Audric right now.
Correct.
They may be better down the road, but he won't be here by then.
Right.
What's great about their step up, as we said before, is that they're going to make sure that you keep Audric fresh. Because as Vince said last week, if you can have a fresh Audric Estime in the second half of the season, because your depth chart allows you to keep the touches down early. Yep. Imagine this Notre Dame football team in October, November, when when USC comes to town, and hopefully what's a cold night, when they go down to Clemson and they're playing the Tigers, who are going to be better this year and hungry in that game. When you're trying to make sure you avoid a slump or a late season swoon or a trap game against Clemson, and you just know we can line up and we got our horse who is fresh and we're just going to run it down your flipping throat. And then and then he's fresh in November, then you give him a month off and you're going into the first playoff game and Audric has about 75 fewer carries on his body than he otherwise would have. Now we're doing something, right? That's where you're excited about the town. And you can use them together. Where if Audric is hammering you and like, man, we gotta squeeze down. All of a sudden you run, Audric here, and I got Jeremiah running like a wheel route or something like that, or Jerry running a wheel route, and your guy's coming down because he's so worried about Audric just hammering him, and boom, we're hitting that sucker big. There's that too. So they're going to be part of what they're doing, guys. But make no mistake, if we thought those guys might beat out Audric, we would have paid a lot more attention to Audric today.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, great way to put it.
Thanks, Vince.
You're welcome. I'm going to throw you a bone every now and again.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Bert Ferentz. If Jordan Botelho just continues to flash, but really needs breaks as far as snaps, and both Josh Burnham and Junior Tuihalamaka step up, how can you get both onto the field at once in this defense?
Well, I think what you can do, however, is I think especially Junior has an opportunity where he could play some field end, because if you're playing a team that's going to throw the ball a lot, Vince, you can put a bigger Viper at the field and do all that, right? And the other thing too is how do you get them on the field? It's in your nickel package is where you can really get them on the field together. Because sometimes you may have 3 Vipers on the field.
That's true.
On third on your maybe not nickel, because your nickel's almost like a base defense, but a dime package.
Sure.
A nickel speed package where you're getting less because it's third. You may have your base nickel, 4 down, 2 backers, 5 DBs, but you may have a tag for like nickel speed, like we talked about with 21 speed last week, where you're getting actually 2 running backs in the field. You can like have some kind of tag, Falcon, whatever you want to call it, where it's the nickel package, but we're putting 2-3 Vipers on the field because it's 3rd and 12.
Right.
And we like being in with 4 down in these situations because it, gap control is a little better with 4 down or whatever the case may be. There's things you can do those type of things, but in the base defense against certain teams, I could see a scenario where Josh Burnham and Junior Tuilamak are both on the field at the same time, or Jordan's on the one side, like he was talking about, and then both of those kids could play the other position. I don't know if it would make sense to have Josh Burnham playing big end right now because he's still a little lighter, but I would put Junior over there.
Junior's got the beef for it.
Yeah, and the power.
Yeah.
A little question here, Vince, from NC Notre Dame fan. He said, how much is the message board? Because we talk a lot about that. So we have several different pricings. The base plan is you can pay $4.99 a month for the message board for a monthly membership, or you can pay for an annual membership at $49.99. You also have what we have called the IB Booster Club. You can join the Shamrock Club, which is $100 a year, the Blue Club, which is $150, or the Gold Club at $200. If you sign up for the Shamrock or Blue Club, you get an IB Club mug that only goes out. So we have the IB mugs, but this one's the IB Club. Only goes to IB Club members. I don't have one. Vince doesn't have one. And if you sign up for the Gold Club, you also get the mug, but you also get an IB Gold Club shirt. So it'll look like this, but instead of IB Nation, it says IB Gold Club. And again, I don't have one. Vince doesn't have one. It's only the Booster Club members, and I'm not a Booster Club member. So we give those out. It's just a thank you for your support. And those are just for people that want to really support us above and beyond the normal rate. But the normal rate is $4.99 a month, $49.99 a year. And I promise you will not regret signing up. Well, I shouldn't say I promise you, because you may not like it. It's not for everybody. But I'm pretty confident that you're gonna if you like the chats and you like the discussion that we have here and in the chats, then it's an extent. The message board is an extension of this, and we give intel and things like that. So you'll definitely want to check it out. And we don't do the clickbait crap, and we believe in getting things right. So that's what I'm.
Somebody wants to know if it says that in your profile on the message board, so you can flex at people.
Yes, it does actually.
That you're a platinum member or whatever.
It does. It says your gold. It says Gold Club, and it does all that stuff.
There you go. See. Yep. Jason, there you go.
Yeah. Is it Spanky? Is that who asked that question?
No, it was not. Okay. It was.
Because if it's Spanky, I'll take it off there. But if it's Jason, I'll put it on there. Yeah, I'll put it on there for you.
I like that, though. That's a good question. I like that.
Yeah.
Corey Dean, just going off of today, which position group needs the most work?
Oh, just off of today? That's a good question, Vince. I would say probably.
Well, for a while there, I was thinking it was the punters, but I take that back now.
Probably the wide receiver still. I mean, that's the group we thought it was going into the season. Sure. I'd say that's probably still accurate. Safety is still a work in progress. It's just Benjamin Morrison was so good today.
Sure.
He just kind of masks some other stuff. I'd say receiver and safeties not named Benjamin Morrison. I mean, not named Xavier Watts. How about that? Is that fair? One for each side of the ball.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You could say tight end too. You could even maybe throw tight end in over there just because of some of the unknowns and stuff. Maybe tight end might be. Let's go tight end, Vince, for me. I'm gonna go tight end for me. I think tight ends are a little bit more of a work in progress than the receivers.
Okay.
Because I think the receivers were a byproduct of that. Again, they were going against Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart, and those guys are really good.
Yeah, good point.
They're really, really good.
From NC Notre Dame fan, who is the player that surprised you the most? Also, how are the walk-ons looking?
We already talked a little bit about the walk-ons, right? So we've already covered that. But anybody surprise you today, Vince? I mean, you're just like, wow, that guy.
It surprised me
off guard a little bit.
Okay, it surprised me that Holden Stays was the starter and was getting a lot of reps, and how I'm not surprised that he's really good. That doesn't surprise me, but it surprised me on how he was being used on day one.
Yeah,
I will say that, and he paid it back. Like he he paid the coaches back for having some confidence in him to give him as many reps as he got. I'll say that.
Right. The way Rocco moved caught me off guard. I mean, we expected Holden to be really good. I'll agree with you. He looked even better than we thought. But I wouldn't say that he surprised me. He was better than we thought. But he didn't surprise me.
That's fair.
You know who else surprised? I thought how well Chris Tyree caught the ball today surprised me a little bit because he didn't fight the ball like he did in the spring.
He did not.
So he surprised me. It's how clean he caught the ball surprised me a little bit today.
Sure,
I'll say that one. Defensively, nobody really surprised me.
Didn't see enough. Like I don't.
Yeah.
Like I knew Jaden Mickey was a talker, and I know he can back it up. Like
we thought that
didn't surprise me.
Vince, and we thought Xavier Watts was going to be really good.
Right.
So I'm not surprised how well he did. Nobody surprised me in a bad way today.
That's a good point.
I would say that I had any kind of expectations for. I would say
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, today, right? It's just today.
Yeah,
today.
Yep. Super chat from AST12321. To hell with the offseason. Football is back, even if it was just camp. Agreed. It's back.
Yeah. Again, we're coaches, right? Camp is football for us.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, if you don't have a good camp, then your season's not going to go well.
Right.
So
I never slept well the night before the first day of football practice.
I was so amped up.
Ever.
Yeah. Amped up and nervous. Like, do I have everything I need? Did I get everything done?
Yeah. 100%. Like 100%. That's the first. I was so much more chill before our first game than I was before the first practice.
Put the work in. The preparation is done. Yeah,
absolutely. If you're nervous going into game one, there's bigger issues.
There's some problems. Yes, there are some problems.
Patrick Fleming.
I want to say this too real quick before we get to Patrick's question. I had a couple people asking about what we saw from defensive assistants. It just was hard for me because we were so far away.
Yeah.
Vince got a little bit of stuff from the corners during the period, but even then he had to focus on the camera. So, I mean, we don't have really opinions of what we saw from O'Leary or especially like Max Bulla or those guys. They were just too far away. We couldn't really evaluate any of that today.
It was tough. When I got the linebackers, Bulla and Golden were both working with them. You know, I couldn't hear what they were saying. I was too far away. But, you know, it was hard to really pull any observations from that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Patrick, let's see what you got here. Does Marcus Freeman have assistants running basic instruction drills for rookies, or are they all doing a lot of standing around while the established players are getting reps?
Well, that's a false choice. Those aren't the only two options.
Right.
I mean, you're running instructions for all of the players on your team. And so if we're doing instruction, everyone's going to then get reps at what we had just instructed. Then when you get to team, only 11 guys can be on the field at a time on your side of the ball. So everyone else is, standing around. But they got a lot of – I mean, the third team got a lot of reps today. I mean, second team – I mean, there were times where, Vince, they were doing like those walkthroughs where you had split fields.
Yep.
Had half the team on one field, half the team on the other field. Get a lot of work in. So
lots of reps.
Those aren't the only two choices, Patrick. Like there's some stuff in between as well. And I think what we saw today, Vince, was the other stuff.
Yeah.
They were giving not basic instruction because it's like you can't teach to your lowest common denominator.
Nope.
You have to bring your lowest common. You have to bring your bottom up. Is the job. A great educator doesn't probably make you mad a little bit, but one of the issues I have with what we have in our education system is like we're getting rid of AP class and all these other things, so we're bringing down the top to not to hurt people's feelings or whatever other dumb reason we're doing it, as opposed to saying, hey, how about we try to lift up the bottom? You know what I mean? And make it better for them. That's what coaching is. It's you can't teach to your freshmen because then you're not giving your veterans the advantage they need. You got to find that sweet spot where I'm teaching my veterans, but making sure that you're bringing the freshmen along, which you do a couple ways. Your veterans help you with that. So if I'm over here instructing so-and-so, then, Jaden Thomas has got his arm around Braylon James saying, hey, you need to do this, 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 and this, right? Or hopefully Dion's doing that. Or Jack Kaiser's taking Jaden Osbrender's under his belt as Al Golden, Max Buller talking to the Wills. Jack's over there in Jaden Osbury's ear, instructing him. That's part of it. And then you also make sure that you're giving them a little extra attention at times during different things, but they're always being taught. But the other thing too, and this is one of the most important things, one of the biggest cliches in sports that is 100% needed cliche, it's an important one, is you need to be getting mental reps, right? Mental reps. And if you teach that properly, it's a great thing. And so I would say if you're a backup quarterback and you're not going through if you're on the sideline and you're a quarterback not on the field, if you're not reading out the play in your mind as to where you would go with the football if you were in there, then you just wasted an opportunity to get better.
Mental reps.
Right. So you're not just standing around. You may be standing there, but you are reading it. You're looking. I always say critique the guy in front of you. If you know what route he's supposed to run, you know how he's supposed to take. How would you critique that? Right. And that's all part of the learning process that you do. And if you have good leaders, and Marcus Freeman said something today that I thought was interesting. He goes, this is my third year at Notre Dame. This is the closest team I've ever had. And he talked about the leadership that they have. And to me, that's a good thing, because now if I'm Al Golden or I'm Max Bulla, I'm not the only one responsible for teaching Drake Bowen and Jalen Sneed and Jaden Osbury and Preston Zinner and Nolan Ziegler. If I have the kind of leaders that I hope I have, you know who else is helping me with Jaden Osbury? Jack Kaiser. You know who else is helping me with Nolan Ziegler and Drake Bowen? JD Bertrand. You know who's helping me with Jalen Sneed or whoever else that's at will? It's Maris Luafau.
Mm-hmm.
You know who's helping me bring along Tyson Ford? It's Javante Jean-Baptiste and Nana, right? On and on and on. That's a team with leadership. So you're hoping you're seeing that too, Patrick. But you have to make sure you got the veterans squared away before you can worry about getting your freshmen. Because, hey, we got the best coached freshmen in the country. We went 6-6 because we didn't spend any time on our veterans, and we coached 2 freshmen all year. But, hey, our freshmen know what they're doing, and we got the freshmen in, and the fans love when freshmen play.
Oh, yeah.
So they're going to be totally fine with us going 6-6 because we played all the freshmen.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. And that's not how it works, Vince.
That's what makes everybody happy. Freshmen.
No, then they just get mad and say, well, wait till next year's freshman class gets in here. Then we're really going to be good. Yeah. Good times.
Irish trending. How much playtime do you expect Jeremiah Love to get this season, even with Price and Payne staying healthy? I mean, that's kind of up to him. He's got to work his way up the depth chart at this point. I mean, he's the only incoming freshman, so he's at the bottom. He's got to work his way up, and that's just how it works when you start camp, okay?
Yeah.
If he continues to build on what he did today, I mean, he's got a chance. Coach McCullough is very specific about how he does playing time. He's got 8 starting roles within how he does things, right? One guy can have 2, 3, 4, 5, all of them, all the way to all 5 guys have one of that. Like, there's a million different scenarios that you can have where Jeremiah gets an opportunity to play. It's way too early to start handing out percentages of snaps and things of that nature.
Especially since you have yet to put shoulder pads on.
Exactly. He looked good today.
Yeah.
He's got to build on it.
It's a good step. It's a good step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Great start.
Yep.
Archer. Fans can overreact to things like camp picks. Is there, if there was something to genuinely be concerned about, how would you report on it?
It would be a thing where it's like, man, this the same things happen over and over, right? Interceptions bother me when they're done because you're lazy with your decision or your throw, or because you're doing things that we are very basic. Like, that's football 101. Why are you even making that throw? Like, you're not even supposed to read that guy. Like, why are you throwing that route? That is literally a clear out route or a sit route. Like, that's not even part of your read. Right. So when you make a throw on that means you're just that's just telling me you're not doing what we're telling you to do. Those things can bother you, and we would report on that. Like, this ball didn't even get to be thrown, and you would then kind of report a little bit on how the coach reacted to it. Coach lost his stuff when a guy threw this pick. Clearly, he was not supposed to do that.
Right.
The other thing too is when you start to get patterns. Right. This kid has thrown multiple interceptions every day. Some of the interceptions we talked about today were during one-on-ones.
Right.
Most of them were
throw
during
the ball.
One-on-ones.
Throw the ball.
You're throwing the ball.
Right.
Those don't bother me. And the only time one-on-one picks bother me is when it's a bad ball. You know, I mean, there's teachable things on that. Hey, that guy cut it off. So how about this? How about you maybe throw that sucker over the top? Right? Hey, I tried to slam it in there, and you told me to throw it. So, okay, I'm telling you to throw it, but I'm also telling you not to give up on the play.
Right.
So
exactly. Put it where only your guy can get it.
Yeah. Throw it high. Yeah. Maybe drop it over top of him. Throw that sucker low and away.
Exactly.
Where that, And those are all part of the learning process. So that's sometimes when you throw a pick on day one, it's kind of like, well, okay, when we're in the film room tonight, so Sam, where could you have thrown that ball where maybe he doesn't get picked?
Right.
And sometimes the answer is nowhere. The guy was running a hitch route and the corner was standing right in front of him. Like, okay, what am I supposed to do? You can throw it away, but give your corner a chance to go make a play. And as a coach, that, like, okay, I know he's not going to make that throw, right?
Exactly.
Then you say, well, but are you teaching bad habits? And maybe, maybe, but one-on-ones aren't really where quarterbacks develop their reading concepts, because there's no read in a one-on-one. You're throwing the out cut, working on timing, right? If you're seeing a guy throw a lot of team interceptions, if you're seeing a guy throw picks because he's rushing throws, the pressure came, he's just getting the ball out quickly and he hits a linebacker in the chest, we would report that, and that'd be a problem.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If
we report things we're concerned about.
So like, we're not one of those people like, I never care about interceptions in practice. I don't really care about them on day one if they're done the way that we saw them today. Like, correct. And that's what we said. The one that we had a problem with was the one that Steve Angeli threw, where it's like, dude, where are you throwing the football?
There was no blue shirt around. Like,
it was kind of a rush throw. It's like, no, that's not the kind of throw you can make. However, I'm not concerned about it because it's day one.
Right.
And Steve Angeli is a redshirt freshman. Right now, if Steve Angeli's still making that throw on day 9 and 13 and 16, that's a big problem. And so I think it's more about the pattern aspects of it, Vince, and that's how we report on it. Like, this is just a read that he's had a hard time making. He has consistently missed on this throw, and I think that's the way that you can report on those type of things, Vince. Any other thoughts on that particular aspect of it?
I mean, the way I was reading the question, Brian, was like, he said, okay, here's an example. It's interceptions or whatever. And then he says, if there's something concerning, like anywhere on the field with anybody, how would we report it? We just tell you what we see. And then we give you our opinion on why that might be a problem. You know what I mean? Like, but we always have something to back it up. It's like, okay, this is happening a lot. Yeah. It's not just an isolated incident. It's not just a bad practice. It's not, because look, fall camp's 4 weeks long. There's no chance that every kid is going to have a great day every day.
Right.
Like, that's just an impossibility. That's never going to happen. And so we get very small peeks into practice. There's a chance that we might see some bad stuff, right? From a kid or whatever, like bad play is what I'm referring to. That could just be a very small window. That's also why we cultivate sources, because what we get to see with our own eyes is very important, but there's also 80% of the practice that we don't get to see. And so we need to find out, okay, is what I'm seeing something that's happening a lot, or did so-and-so just have a bad day? That kind of a thing. So it's multi-level before we want to freak people out in a bad way, or before we want to praise a kid in a great way, because we also want to find out if that is something that's happening on the other 80% of the thing. So Archer, it's all the same as far as we're concerned. Like, we will praise a kid if we find out he's doing this on a consistent basis, and we will level our concern out there if we think that there's something to be concerned about,
we would we've had these conversations after camps before. Like, this is a problem.
Right.
It's like when an O-line's getting beaten week 1 of fall camp, don't care.
Yeah.
When week 1's getting beat, O-line's getting beaten week 3 of fall camp, that's a problem.
That's a problem.
Right. Those are the different aspects of it. But yeah, we would have those conversations, and it would say, like, this is a problem. It's because, like, there's a bad play. The guy threw a pick. It's a bad play.
Right.
And this guy threw a pick, and he had 3 easy misses, and he was rushing his throws, and then you kind of start. If a guy gets beat Joe Walt's going to get beat for a sack this fall camp. Promise you. I don't know when it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Hey, he had a bad set. He didn't set correctly. The guy got underneath his pads, or he didn't took a bad angle in his pass set. Okay, that's what happened. That's what fall camp is for, to work that stuff out.
Exactly.
So that way it doesn't happen when you get to Saturday. And Coach Freeman talked about that. Like, guys, this is all about what's going to get us ready to go win in Dublin. That's what this is about. And you don't have that answer in day 1.
Right.
But what I saw today in day 1, it's a good day 1. It's a very good day 1. and a lot of talent to work with. And now they just got to get more proficient and better. And there's going to be a lot more install. They're going to start throwing a lot more. Because the thing about the install is when you get to day 5 of install, you're still running stuff from days 1, 2, 3, and 4, which makes it a little bit more challenging than day 1. And on day 5 install, you're now also able to get hit because it's the full padded practice. You know what I mean? So it's like, now you separate the men from the boys, so to speak, right? And it's all part of the process. Because you and I both know this, Vince. We called them half-speed heroes, workout warriors. You know, those guys that every year, man, this
practice
kid is
All-Americans.
A star the first 3 days of practice when there's no pads on.
Right.
And then once tackling starts, like this guy doesn't want any part of that.
He doesn't want the smoke, man.
Yeah, and you find out who those guys are. But you don't know that in day 1. Day 1, you're like, oh, so-and-so had a great offseason. Are you seeing he's killing people, right? And and then day 7 or 8 comes, day 10 comes, and it's like this guy hadn't made a plate since we put shoulder pads on. It's not made one play since we put shoulder pads on.
We had a kid was just smoking 7-on-7s. You know what I mean? I mean, he's always open. I mean, just smoking 7-on-7s. You put the pads on, it's like, where did he go? Like it just
alligator arm and everything.
Right. Yep. It's just completely different, completely different. And Archer, the last point I wanted to make with you as well, and I think you probably know this about us. We try to keep it to the play that the guys are making. We're not going to attack a kid. Oh, this kid's terrible. He shouldn't be on the team. That kind of like, we're not going to do that kind of a thing.
Don't think so. I'm trying to think if there's time I might say that, but it's also, we're okay saying this guy's playing bad.
Sure.
I just don't think I would ever say that about something we saw on day 1.
Right.
I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point too.
Yeah. It's day 1. If you're like, we suck on day 1. I had a coach explain it to me this way, and it was so right. During the summer and the first week of fall camp, first 5 days of fall camp, you are like, every team in America, we are going to be so good this year.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we are so good. And then by week 2, you're like, we aren't going to beat anyone. Like, every team in the country by practice 13 is like, we are beating no one this season. That's just fall camp. And then by the end of fall camp, you kind of like have
it evens out someplace.
But you kind of find that like, we are so good. Pads come on. Yeah, we're still pretty good. Week 2, practice 14. We suck so bad because your kid's got heavy legs. You're tired of looking at the same guy every day. You haven't slept in your own bed really in 2 weeks.
Yep.
It's just like we suck so bad. My receivers are all running 4.9s. They got camp legs. My quarterback can't throw an out cut. He's got camp arm.
Yep.
But you battle through it and you get there. But that's all part of the evolution. And sometimes one of the dangers of allowing some media folks at practices, I don't think not everybody understands what the evolution of a football team is supposed to be throughout fall camp.
Right.
And like the biggest one is almost every year that I've covered Notre Dame, there's extreme overreactions to something about the offense, usually a negative overreaction. So-and-so doesn't look good. The offense didn't look good. And it's like, it's the 3rd day of practice. I don't know that I've ever coached. I coached on one team where we looked really good the first week of fall camp. And that was when I was at Duquesne, because we literally had 2 NFL receivers on our football team. Yeah, we were pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, I had Division I receivers, and we were going against FCS receivers. Yeah, we're going to look pretty good, right? I like to think that it's all coaching, but I'm not a liar. I know it's talent.
You're realistic.
I mean, it's usually but even then, we would have our losses and stuff, but it rarely happens your defense is almost always ahead of your offense, except if you're like at USC, because that's always one of USC's, their offense is way ahead of their defense. I'm like, yeah, you guys are going to not be happy about that when the games start being played.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to realize your offense is really good, but you're going to realize it's also because your defense is
terrible,
garbage.
Yes,
because of the way your head coach runs the program. So those are aspects of it, but you got to understand that. And as coaches, you can get frustrated by that, right? We all know it, but we still get mad in practice 10.
And
right? It's just the nature of it.
And look, once you get to practice 13, 14, whatever it is, like coaches' tempers are shorter. Like that's all.
I've seen you more than I've seen my wife.
Yes,
that's a good thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm tired of the OC riding me because his play calls are garbage, and and he's blaming my guys for it. It's how you perceive it, or whatever. And just like, gee, I wish the offensive line coach would teach those guys how to block,
right?
Because my quarterbacks are getting killed every day. It's all that stuff starts ramping up, man.
You got it.
And that's why I say week 2 of fall camp, like, we are beating no one. We suck as coaches. Our kids have no talent. We are gonna suck.
I love it.
And then you're like, okay, you get through that period, and then you're like, okay, we're pretty good again.
So funny,
right? And you have more realistic. But Vince, is that not like how every fall camp has ever gone for you?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Like there was
this year. We're way better this year.
There was little that could have really ticked me off on the first couple of days because I was so excited to be there. Yeah. Like, we're getting back at it. Like,
kids are flying around. They're fresh.
Yeah. Everybody's fresh. Exactly. Because we used to give them the week off before fall camp, and then they would come in and they'd be all fired up, ready to go. Like, nothing could go wrong. And then give it a week. Just give it a week.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. All right, Vince, that is going to actually do it. We had a super sticker.
Oh,
John Bertucci. Thanks, you, John. Very, 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 very much, man. We appreciate you. But that's going to do it, Vince. You want to take us out of here?
Absolutely. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. It was a great day. It was Christmas morning for us. Got to go see some Notre Dame football, seeing the ball all over the place and just having a great time. We had a ton of people in here today, and it was awesome. It was awesome to share this day with you guys. We're going to be back tomorrow. We got a practice viewing tomorrow. And I assume
Ryan and I will do one at 1.
Okay.
I'll do kind of my recap at 1, and then you and Jesse will do yours right at 6.
At 6 o'clock. Yep.
Okay.
So we'll be back with IB Nation Sports Talk tomorrow night. Gave Jesse the night off tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow night as well. So hey, more observations, more excitement, guys. Football season is here, so let's get after it. But make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and share with your family and friends. So for Brian, I'm Vince. Thanks for joining us on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.